Chapter 260. It was beyond Ouyang Shua's expectations to be able to take down the Tianfeng tribe without bloodshed. As soon as the army arrived at the outskirts of the Tianfeng tribe, they met the messenger, Hai Rigu, who had rushed over to surrender. After figuring out the messenger's intentions, Ouyang Shua did not know whether to laugh or cry. He did not expect that his plan would be so effective. He had reached the realm of subduing the enemy without fighting. Even so, Ouyang Shua did not let down his guard. He ordered the army to continue moving. The mighty army was like a hurricane, sweeping toward the Tianfeng tribe. Further away, light cavalry could be seen flashing by from time to time. They were scouts sent by other tribes. Ouyang Shua did not stop them. He openly displayed the military power of Shanhai County. This was how nomadic tribes were. They feared the strong and bullied the weak. If they did not do this, they would not be able to intimidate the other heroes. Under the blue sky and white clouds, the army of tens of thousands marched forward in an orderly manner. If one did not see it with their own eyes, they would not be able to understand how shocking it was. The largest tribe in the grasslands, the Tianji tribe, had a total of more than 10,000 soldiers. After the army arrived at the Tianfeng tribe's base camp, the herdsmen walked out of their tents curiously. Seeing such a military formation, they could not help but secretly rejoice that the chief did not choose war. Otherwise, who knew how many of their sons would have died on the battlefield? In the end, they still ended up with their entire tribe being wiped out. Ouyang Shua ordered the Yuyi County City Guard Brigade to enter the base camp and take over the defense. The next step was to disarm the enemy. The 3,000-man teams of the Tianfeng tribe were stripped of their weapons and armor and detained separately. Whether it was the army or the common people, they would more or less have some resistance towards the victors. Ouyang Shua was naturally very careful, so as not to fail miserably. After he was done, Ouyang Shua was completely relieved. He began to meet the important figures of the Tianfeng tribe. Tianfeng tribe, tent. Ouyang Shua was respectfully invited to sit at the seat of honor. Dari Achi led a group of nobles and knelt down. Greetings, Marquis. Ouyang Shua noticed that Dari Achi's expression was somewhat bitter. He was even more embarrassed when he knelt down. Things had happened in a hurry. For a moment, Ouyang Shua did not know how to settle them. He said, "I am deeply gratified that all of you have surrendered sincerely. I would like to ask you to move to Shanhai County and share your wealth. How about that?" The nobles looked at each other. This was a disguised form of house arrest. But now that they were meat on the chopping block, they had no choice but to lower their heads and obediently said, "Thank you for your grace." Since the other party had taken the initiative to surrender, Ouyang Shua naturally wouldn't go on a rampage and do anything that was out of bounds. However, Ouyang Shua did not feel at ease leaving these nobles in the tribe. Thus, he compromised by moving them to Shanhai County and settling them there for the rest of their lives. That was the best choice. In this way, they could also serve as an example to the other tribes on the grassland. If any tribe could not survive, they could take the initiative to surrender to Shanhai County if they had nowhere else to go. That was also an acceptable way out. Next, it was time to deal with the Sky Abundant tribe. In the long run, taking down the Tianfeng tribe was of great significance. It would announce that Shanhai County was forcefully involved in the affairs of the grasslands. It would provide a reliable springboard for them to unify the grasslands in the future. As for the tangible benefits in front of him, the most important were the green beetle horses and the 3,000 elites of the Tianfeng tribe. According to statistics, other than the 6,000 green beetle horses for the 3,000 soldiers, the Tianfeng tribe still had more than 3,500 green beetle horses. How could Ouyang Shua not be excited? The 3,000 elites were dispersed by Ouyang Shua and assigned to the 2nd, 4th, and 5th brigades of the 1st Division. The 3,000 cavalrymen who were replaced were reorganized into the Shanhai County Independent Brigade and stationed at the Northern Barracks. Among the officers, the 10-man commanders were appointed platoon leaders, and the centurions were appointed platoon leaders. As for the 3 Kiliarchs, they would face different fates. Needless to say, Hu Chi-tu was imprisoned. he would be transferred to the Shanghai County Prison and handed over to the Sentencing Bureau. According to the crimes he had committed, he would probably spend the rest of his life in prison. The remaining two Kiliarchs were called Mo Zhigan and Xiaobu. Mo Zhigan was 45 years old and was a veteran in the army. He was over 40 years old and was considered old in the grassland tribes. Ouyang Shua arranged for him to retire to Shanghai County. What Ouyang Shua admired the most was the young Xiaobu. Xiaobu was 26 years old and was quite famous in the grassland. He was not a member of the Tianfeng tribe, but a member of a small tribe that had been destroyed by the Tianfeng tribe. Dari Achi appreciated his talent and made an exception to promote him to a Chiliarch. Name: Xiaobu Gold. Identity: Shanghai County resident. Occupation: Intermediate General. Loyalty: 75 Commander, 55 Force, 70 Intelligence, 42 Politics, 24 Specialty. Rapid Attack: increases troop movement speed by 10. Powerful Shooting: increases arrow attack by 10. Skill: Bees Archery Equipment. Condor Shooting Bow. Remarks: practiced archery since young and is very accurate. Later joined the army. Forthright and cherishes his subordinates. After checking Xiaobu's attributes, Ouyang Shua did not hesitate and immediately appointed him as the commander of the Independent Brigade. With the help of Xiaobu, who was familiar with the grassland, Ouyang Shua believed that the northern barracks would be as solid as a rock. After the reorganization of the army was completed, the 2nd, 4th, 5th Brigades, Independent Brigade, and the Royal Guard Brigade of the 1st Division were all equipped with Green Beetle horses. The remaining 2,000 Green Beetle horses were sent by Ouyang Shua to the Gale Valley Military Horse Farm. The main camp of Tianfeng tribe was changed into the northern barracks under Ouyang Shua's orders. The commander of the northern barracks was still Lin Yi, while Xiaobu was appointed as the deputy commander. Other than the nobles and their families who were moved to Shanghai County, the normal herdsmen were put under the jurisdiction of Yi County. Due to the nature of the nomadic tribes, Ouyang Shua allowed the herdsmen to build settlements outside the city. As for the destroyed market, it had lost its usefulness as the situation in the grassland changed. No tribe was willing to trade with them anymore, so Ouyang Shua decided not to rebuild it, and the market became history. The change in Tianfeng tribe was like a big show, shocking all the tribes in the grassland. Only then did they know that in the south of the grassland, there was a territory called Shanghai County that had been eyeing them. All of a sudden, all the tribes were in danger. Tianfeng tribe's surrender was the best proof of Shanghai County's military strength. Not to mention that after Tianfeng tribe's surrender, Shanghai County's strength would increase even further. Faced with this change, the cowardly began to group up. The ambitious ones, on the other hand, turned their attention to their neighbors. The best way to establish a foothold in the grassland was to continue annexing and expanding their strength. These mid-sized tribes wouldn't dare to touch Shanghai County. What happened to Tianfeng tribe was a good example. They didn't want to go for wool and come home shorn. Who knew how many troops Shanghai County had? To be continued. Chapter 261. By the time Ouyang Shua finished dealing with the affairs of the Sky Rich tribe, 2 days had already passed. On the way back to Shanghai County, Ouyang Shua heard a system announcement. System announcement. China has successfully promoted 100 counties, triggering the battle system. The third battle, the Battle of Chongping, will officially begin in 3 days. Please look forward to it. Friendly reminder, the Battle of Chongping is a non-compulsory battle mission. Only counties and above are eligible to participate. It was unexpected, but reasonable. The requirement to participate in the Battle of Chongping was raised by a large margin. Only counties and above could participate, which meant that the number of lords participating would not exceed 100. Gaia's setting was undoubtedly widening the gap between the lords. Those that had not yet been promoted to a county would lose the opportunity to participate in the battle, which also meant that they would lose the opportunity to gain achievement points. As a result, their road to becoming a county would become even more bumpy. It was almost certain that after missing this golden opportunity, these territories would lose the right to fight for supremacy. Apart from a few lucky ones who could catch up, The rest would basically face the fate of being swallowed up by the surrounding territories. As more and more territories were promoted to county, battles between territories would break out from time to time. Shanghai County was no longer the only one. The only special thing was that Shanghai County had gone further. As the threats were eliminated one by one, Ouyang Shah set his sights on unifying the Lianzhou Basin. Of course, the prerequisite was to first become a county city. Shanghai County's population had already reached 100,000 and was ready to be promoted at any time. When the Battle of Chongping was over, Ouyang Shah would apply to the system for promotion. He didn't know what kind of test he would have to go through to become a county city. Just as Ouyang Shah was thinking about the future of his territory, another shocking message came from the national channel. Dichen, how can you say you have no clothes? The Yanhuang Alliance has chosen the state of Zhao for the Battle of Chongping. Does the Shanghai Alliance dare to accept the challenge and compete on the battlefield? The players were in an uproar. This was the second time that Dichen had provoked Ouyang Shah. The difference was that this time it was in the name of the Yanhuang Alliance. Evidently, the Yanhuang Alliance had reached a consensus on this matter. It wasn't Dichen's personal action, so the meaning behind it was naturally extraordinary. More importantly, everyone knew that the Battle of Chongping had ended with the state of Qin's victory. The Yanhuang Alliance had chosen the state of Zhao's camp, which meant that they had the confidence to turn defeat into victory. With such a situation, Ouyang Shah had no choice but to agree. Ouyang Shah was speechless. Even if he used his toes to think, he could guess that the Yanhuang Alliance must have received news of the Battle of Chongping in advance, and had long since made preparations. Only then would they have the confidence to challenge the alliance of mountains and seas. This time, the situation was completely reversed. Before Ouyang Shah could say anything, the alliance channel had already exploded. This was especially true for the siege lion. It was the most ferocious, and it looked like it wanted to challenge Di Chun to a duel. Even the usually calm dragon seeking acupoint, and the others were indignant and requested a fight. On the other hand, Feng Xiaohuang had made the same conjecture as Ouyang Shah. Even so, it was not enough to quell the flames of war in everyone's hearts. Wui, what do you think? Bai Hua asked. The channel instantly went silent. Clearly, everyone had tacitly passed the decision to Ouyang Shah. Ouyang Shah grinned and said, "If he wants to fight, then let's fight." Agreed. The members of the alliance quickly reached an agreement. The honor of the Mountains and Seas Alliance could not be challenged. Although Ouyang Shah had spoken such bold words, he did not underestimate his opponent. This was a battle that he could not afford to lose. The next day, the members of the Mountains and Seas Alliance gathered in Shanghai County to discuss countermeasures. Among all the members, only Swan and I came to Shanghai County for the first time. Swan and I, like Bai Hua and Dragon Seeking Acupoint, had obtained a silver village creation token and a king summoning talisman for the village creation mission. Unfortunately, he had only summoned a civil official who could not be of any use in battle. Xiongba also suffered the same fate as Swan and I. During the Battle of Mai, Ouyang Shah did not see any historical generals by his side. However, Wandering Huan had a historical general by his side. The last time Bai Hua and the others had come to Shanghai County was when it had been promoted to a rank 1 county and had defended against the bandits. Half a year had passed, and Shanghai County had changed greatly. Apart from the Lord's Mansion, there were no traces of the past. Even the Lord's Mansion had changed its plaque. Looking at the huge plaque that read, Marquis Lien Province's Mansion, Siege Lion said enviously, "When can my Lord's Mansion have a plaque like this? It's so cool. You should give up on that idea." Dragon Seeking Acupoint teased. Wui, it's getting more and more shocking every time. Bai Hua sighed. The development of Shanghai County had never made anyone compare themselves to it. They could only look up to it. This time, we have to take a good look and learn from Big Brother Wui. Swan and I, who had always been silent, could not help but speak up with a smile. Shanghai County's development plan was like a living textbook for territory development. Ouyang Shua smiled. "Let's talk inside." He led everyone to the front courtyard. Everyone took their seats and exchanged greetings with each other. Among the members, Swan and I and Song, when we're new members, so they took this opportunity to talk to the others and get to know each other better. What are everyone's thoughts on this battle? Ouyang Shua asked straightforwardly. Everyone present was an elite among the lords. Even if they did not know much about the Battle of Chongping, after the system announcement, they had enough time to look up the details of the battle through the forums. Feng Xiaohuang was still the most enthusiastic one. She took the lead and spoke first. This battle concerns the success or failure of the Shanghai Alliance and Yanhuang Alliance. Its importance cannot be overemphasized. The Yanhuang Alliance taking the lead is both good and bad. What do you mean? There's no need to talk about the benefits. In the previous two battles, Wu Yi has already proved that taking the lead and making preparations in advance can be effective. Whether it's the compass chariot or the crossbow, they can both determine victory or defeat. The downside is obvious. The Yanhuang Alliance is going all out this time, and if they lose, they'll lose all their face, and they won't be able to compete with us anymore, Feng Xiaohuang said confidently. Bai Hua frowned. We can't be so optimistic. Di Chun and the others have been bullied by Wu Yi a few times, so they've learned their lesson. If they didn't have some confidence, why would they openly provoke us on the national channel? Ouyang Shua bitterly smiled and shook his head. Why did Bai Hua think that he was a bully? Feng Xiaohuang declined to comment. I'm not being blindly optimistic. Compared to the Yanhuang Alliance, we have our own advantages, which is that our nobility ranks are higher than theirs. Chapter 262. That's right. Di Chun and the others are only second-rank marquises and can only lead 1,000 troops at most. On the other hand, Big Brother is a third-rank marquis and can lead 10,000 troops, which is equivalent to 20 new feudal lords. Adding us, our total troops will be over 20,000. Conservatively speaking, we will make up more than 25% of the total troops in this battle. In the end, strength speaks louder. The Siege Lion agreed. Don't forget, the Battle of Chongping involves millions of troops. What can our 20,000 men do? The deciding factor is the armies of Qin and Zhao. Dragon-seeking Acupoint wasn't so optimistic. Ouyang Shua didn't participate in the discussion and only spoke up after hearing them talk about the army. What can an army of 20,000 do? That will depend on what kind of troops we bring. Wu Yi is right. Although we can't be the main force, we could be the vanguard. Feng Xiaohuang nodded in agreement. Looks like we'll have to spill the beans again. Let's stop guessing. What kind of troops should we send? Mulan Yu pouted. Ouyang Shua looked at Zhu Shu and said, Mr. Zhu Shu should answer this question. As the chief strategist of the Alliance of Mountains and Seas, Zhu Shu didn't want to pass on this responsibility. Thanks to the powerful Gaia, these historical figures had a deep understanding of war and didn't need to give any special instructions. Zhu Shu stood up and bowed to the feudal lords, saying, The troops that can be sent are infantry, archers, and cavalry. Qin is proficient in both infantry and cavalry, and is famous for their valiant infantry. Archers that aren't organized can't be of much use in such a large-scale battle. Among the Alliance's infantry, other than the Mountain Barbarians' heavy infantry, there probably isn't any unit that can contend against Qin's infantry. Thus, we can only send the cavalry. But Zhao's cavalry is unparalleled in the world through the reform of the who dress and archery. Will it work? Dragon-seeking Acupoint raised an objection. I agree with Mr. Zhu Shu. Ouyang Shua said, Shanghai County will send out 10,000 elite cavalry for this battle. The situation before and after the Warring States period is different. Up until the spring and autumn period, battles were fought at a predetermined location. Both sides would get into formation and face each other one by one, just like how nobles dueled. The battles we experienced in Zhuolu and Mai were like this. A huge battle determined the outcome. During the Warring States period, etiquette and music collapsed. Wars were fought with the goal of killing the enemy and annexing land. As for the Battle of Chongping, it was a classic case of encirclement and annihilation, so it was necessary to maintain a certain degree of mobility. No matter how powerful Zhao's cavalry is, we can only choose the cavalry. There was a moment of silence in the hall as everyone digested this news. Big brother, you're not even going to bring a trump card like the heavy infantry? The siege lion asked hesitantly. Ouyang Shua shook his head and said, I won't hide it from you guys. The mountain barbarians' heavy infantry has only developed to this point, and there are only 2,000 people in total. The heavy armor they wore could only be used for defense. 2,000 mountain barbarians are like a cup of water on a burning cart of firewood in such a big battle. They are unable to play a central role and are unable to cooperate with the Qin infantry. It is better not to bring them. Since Big Brother is willing to cut his losses, I have nothing else to say. Everyone will bring cavalry, the siege lion said with a smile, firmly supporting Ouyang Shua's decision. The others nodded in agreement with Zhu Sheng and Ouyang Shua. Seeing that the lords had reached a consensus, Zhu Sheng said, There's one more thing I have to remind everyone. Sir, please speak. In the Battle of Chongping, Zhao's logistical support is superior to Qin's. Although Qin has stockpiled large amounts of rations in Yuan Fortress, it is extremely difficult to turn the rations into edible food. Therefore, if possible, it is best for all of you to bring a batch of rations pills to reduce the pressure on Qin's logistical support. Back when Ouyang Shua bought the Rations Pill Manufacturing Technical Manual and Tents Manufacturing Technical Manual, he didn't keep them to himself. He had long revealed the information to his allies. Therefore, other than Wanshu District and Tianchuang District, which were added later, the other territories could produce rations, pills, and tents. Ouyang Shua predicted that Di Chun and the others might have grasped these two technologies as well. Their family had professionals researching the market, so it was impossible for them to give up on such powerful weapons after the Battle of Zhuolu. After discussing the military preparations, Feng Qiuhuang brought up another question. Wu, do you think we should contact some lords and invite them to join Qin's camp? Ouyang Shua frowned and said, Feng Wu, are you saying that Di Chun and the others will use this opportunity to rope in the lords and cause an imbalance between the two camps? Ouyang Shua immediately understood what Feng Qiuhuang was trying to say. Based on my understanding of them, I am 100% sure that they will do so. These guys can't win in a head-on fight, but they are better at using underhanded means than anyone else. That's right. In the real world, the wave of land acquisition pushed a large portion of the territory to the hands of large and medium-sized forces. They are inextricably linked to the Yan-Huang alliance. Song 1, who had been silent all this while, suddenly spoke up. Song 1, who had been silent all this while, suddenly spoke up. He was one of the earliest beneficiaries, so he naturally had a deep understanding of this. Tianchuang District had used the Song clan's powerful influence, and Shanghai districts helped to catch up and become one of the top 100 counties in China. At the same time, those territories that were acquired would naturally develop into the best of the best. A battle between commoner players and nobles, Fine said in a self-mocking tone. He himself had suffered greatly, not being trusted by Di Chun and the others, and was forced to join the Shanghai alliance to seek protection. Ouyang Shua fell silent. Whether he was willing or not, the Shanghai alliance and the Yan-Huang alliance each represented these two forces. Although the boundaries weren't very clear, with Feng Qiuhuang and Song when representing the Shanghai alliance, and the Yan-Huang alliance having commoner players like Wandering Huan, the overall situation wasn't too bad. What do you guys think? Ouyang Shua didn't make a decision on his own. I think that this kind of thing is completely voluntary. This time, our camps have already been made clear. Every lord has their own considerations on which side to stand on. Those who trust us will naturally choose Qin's camp without us having to persuade them. Those who don't trust us won't have much of an effect, even if they try to persuade them. Instead, they'll just be asking for trouble. That's right. Siege Lion expressed his agreement. Bawa didn't object either. At the end of the day, everyone had their own pride and didn't want to ask for help. Ouyang Shua already knew what was going on. He slapped the table and loudly said, All right, then it's decided. We'll deal with the changes by remaining unchanged. I'd like to see just how much influence the Alliance of Mountains and Seas has among the Lord-class players. Chapter 263. P.S. The map of the Battle of Chongping has been uploaded in the book group album. Those interested can take a look. After sending off the members of the Alliance of Mountains and Seas, Ouyang Shua began to mobilize the army for the final preparations. The army that was going to battle included Wang Feng's Palace Guard Brigade, Lin Yi's Heavy Cavalry 2nd Brigade, Luo Shixin's Light Cavalry 4th Brigade, and Xiaobu's Light Cavalry Independent Brigade. The 1st Division's 1st Brigade guarded the West Barracks, while the 3rd Brigade guarded the East Barracks. Sun Quanlin's Crossbow Cavalry 5th Brigade was transferred to the North Barracks to assist the remaining 500 cavalry of the Independent Brigade in defending the North Barracks. Of course, Shi Wansui and Eli, the two generals, had to go with them. Fortunately, all the divisions were cavalry. Within a day, they had all gathered at the headquarters. In terms of logistics, Ouyang Shua took 200,000 military ration pills from the combat division, enough for the army to use for 20 days. If the war horses were included, it would only last for less than 10 days. Ouyang Shua also wanted to bring more military ration pills. Firstly, the storage space was limited, and secondly, the military factory's production was limited. 200,000 military ration pills was the factory's production for a month and a half. Therefore, unless Qin's logistical support was insufficient, Ouyang Shua would not use them. According to the price of 1 silver per military ration pill, 200,000 military ration pills would be 2,000 gold coins. Adding on 10,000 gold coins for teleportation, Ouyang Shua had already spent 12,000 gold coins before the battle even started. If he couldn't get a good result, it would be a huge loss. Gaia Year 11, 14th day, 9 a.m., the system announcement rang. System announcement, 262 BC. Qin attacked King Yuang of Han. Yuang surrendered to Qin, and Shangdang fell. Han was in a panic and offered Shangdang to appease the Qin army. Governor Feng Ting was unwilling to enter Qin and sent an envoy to King Zhao to surrender. King Zhao accepted Shangdang gladly. The Qin emperor was furious and ordered the left minister Wang Qi to lead an army to attack Shangdang. Zhao Sui ordered Lian Pa to lead reinforcements, and they were locked in a stalemate at Chongping. In the 3rd year, Qin sent Princess Jean to Zhao. In July, the Zhaos changed generals and sent Zhao Kuo to replace Lian Pa. Qin secretly promoted the Lord of Martial Peace, Bai Qi, to the position of Great General. Bai Qi took advantage of Zhao Kuo's arrogance and underestimation of the enemy. He adopted a strategy of feigning defeat and retreating, luring the enemy out of their formation, then encircling them and annihilating them. He won the war and killed 200,000 Zhao soldiers who surrendered. The 3rd epic battle, the Battle of Chongping, officially begins. 10,000 elite cavalrymen of Shanghai County lined up in the square, ready to set off. As usual, the requirements to participate in the battle were checked, the number of participants was confirmed, and the faction was chosen. System notice. Congratulations to player who has no clothes for activating the war teleportation array. 10,000 people have been teleported. 10,000 gold has been deducted from player who has no clothes teleportation fee. System notice. Teleportation has begun. After a short period of dizziness, Ouyang Shua and the others appeared on the battlefield of Chongping. System notification. Welcome to the state of Qin's base camp, Guanglang City. In 262 BC, the state of Qin captured Yanpong, an important city of Han and Hanoi. Yanpong was stationed at the exit of Taiyangxing, the second of the 8 Xingxing. It was an important stronghold to ensure that Han's Shandong County entered Hanoi and was connected to the area south of the Yellow River. After losing Yanpong, the connection between Shandong County and the capital of Han, Xinjiang, was cut off. To Han, the barren land and sparsely populated Shandong County was a dead land. Hence, Han decided to trade land for peace and cede Shandong County to Qin. However, the governor of Shandong County, Feng Ting, gave Shandong County to Zhao to continue resisting Qin. This led to the war between Qin and Zhao over Shandong, the Battle of Chongping. At that time, the Zhao court had a heated debate on whether to accept Shandong. Lord Pingyuan, Zhao Sheng, believed that Zhao could occupy Shandong without sacrificing a single soldier and agreed to accept it. Lord Pingyang, Zhao Bao, believed that Qin and Zhao's overall national strength was far greater than Zhao's, so he strongly opposed accepting Shandong and Qin. Zhao Kuo, on the other hand, came to the conclusion that Zhao had to accept Shandong. This was because if Qin obtained Shandong County of Han and occupied Huguan, they could attack Zhao's capital, Handan, directly if they attacked Shandong. Because of this, Shandong was of little value to Han, but to Zhao, it was a matter of life and death. On the surface, Qin attacking Shandong was a battle with Han, but in actual fact, it was to prepare for their next attack on Zhao. Hence, regardless of whether they accepted it or not, there would definitely be a battle between Zhao and Qin. If they accepted Shandong, Zhao would be able to gain the initiative and prepare for battle. This was a wise move. In 262 BC, the famous general of Zhao, Lian Pe, led the Zhao army to accept Shandong. At the same time, he set up defenses around Chongping to stop the Qin army. Lian Pe chose to set up defenses around Chongping due to the geographical conditions. Firstly, Chongping was a strategic location in the entire Shandong area with many advantageous military and geographical conditions. The area was mainly hilly, followed by mountainous areas, and finally flat plains. The main river was the Dan River, which had 5 main tributaries: Su River, Dongtsang River, Shaodongsang River, Dongde River, and Yonglu River. They formed a network throughout the area and were rich in groundwater. With such a geographical environment, the mountainous areas were dangerous, especially in the west and north where there were forts such as Gao Pass, Chongping Pass, and Old Pass that could be defended. As the saying goes, one man can hold the pass against 10,000. The hills were not a hindrance to the movement of the troops, but could be used for covert operations. The river valleys and flat plains were ideal for the movement of large troops and the transportation of supplies. All these were advantageous to the main army and disadvantageous to the guest army. Secondly, whether it is Qin attacking Shandong or Handan, there are only 2 strategic routes in the mountains that they could take, namely the western route through Black Ridge and Old Horse Ridge, or the southern route through Yangchangban and Tianjing Pass. Chongping is a strategic shortcut, and it is also a route that they have no other choice but to take. That is to say, as long as Lian Pe had a strong army to defend Chongping, the Qin army would not be able to sneak past Shandong and get close to Handan. The Zhao army headed west from the capital, Handan, past the 4th of the 8 Xing of Taiying, Fuka Xing, then west past Hukou Pass and entered the hinterland of Shandong. From there, they turned southwest and followed the Bajian River, passed Ba Yi village, past Old Pass, and entered Chongping. They then followed the Shaodongsang River Valley and passed Jinmen Town to Xian. Xian was situated in the middle of the Dan River, where the Dan River and Shaodongsang River converged. The terrain was relatively low and humid, open and flat. The 2 sides of the river were separated by about 10 kilometers of open land. Although there were many hills in the middle, it did not hinder movement. Instead, it was dangerous. One could follow the riverbed of the Dan River to the southeast, or follow the riverbed of the Dan River to the northwest, or follow the riverbed of the Yuan village and Ma village to the southwest. After Lian Pe entered Chongping, he set up the following 3 lines of defense. First, the Old Horse Ridge defense line. In the middle of the Old Horse Ridge was a huge mountain pass, commonly known as Gaoping Pass. There was a steep cliff on the left and a steep stream on the right. There was only one line in the middle to connect the east and west. The mountain pass was 350 meters long from east to west and 1,000 meters wide from north to south. There were river valleys to the west and east of the mountain. The Duanshe River's tributary, Yushi River, went west. Although the Guan East was supported by Haoshan Mountain, there were 2 tributaries of the Dan River, Ma Village River and Yuan Village River to the east. The river valleys were good for travel, and it was another important military hub between Shandong and Hedong. After Lian Pe set up defenses on the Old Horse Ridge, he built 2 cities at the riverbed intersection of the South Horse Village River and the North Horse Village River in the Haoshan Pass. They were the reinforcements for the Old Horse Ridge outpost, and formed a triangular formation. The two cities were backed by mountains and faced rivers. They were a well-fortified area and could be heavily fortified to reinforce Gaoping Pass at any time. Erlian City followed the Ma-Cun River and the Yuan-Cun River to the east. At the confluence of the two rivers was Kongying Village. South of the village was the Su River. South of the village was the Northern Ridge Mountain. West of the village was the confluence of the Ma-Cun River and the Yuan-Cun River, west of which was the Wolf Mountain. This village could be said to be surrounded by mountains and three rivers, forming a closed geographical environment. At the same time, the three river valleys curved outwards, forming a typical military hub that could be advanced or retreated, easy to defend and hard to attack. Kongying was Guanglang City. It was originally an important backup and supply base for Zhao Xin family and Liang Mountain to defend the Old Horse Ridge. Later, it was captured by Qin's left minister Wang Qi and became the base for the Qin army to advance east. The Guanglang city that Ouyang Shuo and the rest landed in was here. Let's not talk about this for now. Let's first introduce the other two defense lines that Lian set up. Second, the Dan River defense line. The Dan River originates from the Danzhu Ridge of the Changzi Mountain in Gaoping and flows southeast from the center of Gaoping through the entire territory, through Jinsheng in the south, and finally into the Yellow River in Hunan. The valley is deep and the flow is large. The terrain along the coast is open, making it convenient for large troops to move. Lian made use of this natural barrier to build a second defense line on the east bank of the Dan River. This was the main defense line of the Zhao army. This defense line started from the Xian family Zhao village into Liang Mountain on the east bank of the Dan River to Gaoping and Jinsheng's upper and lower Qinggong village. From the Xian family's northwest along the east bank of the Dan River were Dianshang, Qijia Courtyard, Weicheng, Shimin, Arrowhead, three armies, Mount Hanwang, Yonglu, Chongping, Diaoshan, Water, Severing, and Danzhu Ridge. Daliang Mountain was where Lian stored his grain. From the north, there was Guanjia Ridge and Seven Buddha Mountain. The three mountains were connected and formed one mountain. This mountain was the tallest among the mountains in Gaoping. To the northeast, one could see the Old Pass. To the southwest, one could see the Old Horse Ridge. To the north was Mount Hanwang. One was south and one was north. From a high vantage point, they formed the two eyes of the Zhao army's defense line. They could easily control the situation of the enemy and the enemy on the east and west. From a military geographical point of view, such a situation was extremely advantageous. It was especially important in cold weapons battles and ancient wars without modern means of communication. At the foot of the mountain, there was the Shaodongsong River Valley on the left and the Dongsong River Valley on the right. They were parallel to the northeast and pointed toward Handan. They could maintain close communication with the rear and ensure the supply of grain. Lianpo's shogunate was located at the Liang Mountain. Mount Hanwang was located 75 kilometers north of Gaoping. It was the watershed of the Dan River, the Little Eastern Song River, and the Yonglu River. This mountain towered into the clouds. If one climbed up and gazed into the distance, they would be able to see the plains, villages, and sceneries on both sides of the Dan River. To the west of Mount Hanwang was the General Ridge. It was almost as tall as the main mountain. From the top, one could see the entire Dan River. Just like how Daliang Mountain was set up for Lianpo during the 3 Years' War, Hanwang Mountain was set up for General Zhao Kuo during the final battle, and the line from the west of Hanwang Mountain to the Dan River was the main battlefield of the final battle, which was also the central area where the Zhao army was finally surrounded. Chongping Pass was located at the border between Gaoping and Changzi. To the north of the pass was the source of the Zhujiang River. To the south of the pass was the Dan River. To the east and west of the pass were mountains. The west mountain was Danzhu Ridge, the highest peak in the area. The north slope of Chongping Pass was relatively flat, while the south slope was steep. From the south, one could look down from a high vantage point. Chongping Pass was the northern terminus of Lianpo's second line of defense. It was to defend against the Qin army from the east or north. Third, the 100-mile stone wall line of defense. This line of defense was in the northwest and southeast direction, mainly from east to west. This line of defense started from Chongping Pass in the west and extended from Nangong Mountain to Yangtu Mountain, then from Golden Spring Mountain to Saddle Ravine at the border between Lingchuan and Hu Pass. It was named so because of the simple 100-mile stone wall that was built along the mountain. If Old Horse Ridge was Zhao's defensive outpost and the Dan River was the main position, then the 100-mile stone wall was Zhao's rear. This line of defense was built by Lien Pe at the northeast, which was the deepest part of Zhao's rear. It was also the last line of defense that concerned the safety of Shandong and even their headquarters in Handan. During the spring and summer of 262 BC, Lien Pe set up a defense at Old Horse Ridge, while Wang Xiai led his army along the Qin River to prepare for an assault. The Zhao army at Old Horse Ridge met with the Qin outpost. The defenders could not hold on, and the Qin army pressed forward. Wang Xiai broke through Zhao's natural stronghold of Old Horse Ridge and its defense, taking over its support and supply base, the Four Mountains Ring defense, and the Three Rivers Confluence Fortress, Guanglang City. The obstacles on the east side of the Dan River were all swept away, and they reached the west bank of the Dan River in one go, forming a situation where they were facing off against Zhao across the river. During the encounter, Lien Pe understood the Qin army's combat power and could not fight them head-on. Perhaps he could conserve his strength and wait for an opportunity to attack. Without organizing any resistance, he retreated to the east bank of the Dan River along the mountains and defended the favorable terrain. Relying on the Dan River, he used all his strength to strengthen the Dan River line of defense. At this point, Lien Pe waited for the Qin army. The Qin army challenged him several times, but the Zhao army did not come out. Just like this, he made full use of the favorable terrain that he occupied and defended his position. Using the principle of not changing, he persisted for several years. The powerful and eager Wang Xiai was at his wit's end and could not cross the Dan River. The battle was in a stalemate with no clear winner or loser. The Qin army came from afar and had a hard time resupplying their rations. They were also known as the country of tigers and wolves due to their bloodthirsty nature. In the Shandong, they could be said to be an unjust cause with little support. The Zhao army was at ease waiting for the exhausted. Their supplies could come in time, and they had the full support and cooperation of the Shandong's officials and people. This determined that the Qin army was good for a quick battle, while the Zhao army was good for a drawn-out battle. The battle situation could not stay at the same level for long. It could either continue to develop according to Lien Pe's strategy and counterattack to defeat or destroy the Qin army, or it could be that the Zhao court was hindering them or the Qin court's countermeasure would cause the situation to develop in the opposite direction. The result was that King Xiaoqing of Zhao, who was young and impatient and had little military knowledge, used Lien Pe's strategy of waiting for the exhausted to attack the enemy as not daring to fight. The king of Zhao thought that he would give in, and Prime Minister Fan Zhu of Qin ordered the Jin to rebel against Zhao, so that Zhao Kuo could replace Lien Pe to attack Qin. At the same time, the Qin heard that Ma Fuzi would be the Lord of Martial Peace, Bai Qi as the Great General, and Wang Xiai as the Lieutenant General. Those who dared to leak information about the Lord of Martial Peace would be executed. From then on, the 3-year stalemate between the weak Zhao and the strong Qin was finally broken. The battle situation was in Qin's favor and not Zhao's. When Ouyang Shua arrived at Radiant Wolf City, he did not know how far Gaia had extrapolated the war to. Would it be at the stage where Lien Pe and Wang Bei faced off against each other for 3 years? Or would it be the final battle between Bai Qi and Zhao Kuo? To be continued. Chapter 264. There was also a registration point in Guanglang City. A Qin officer was in charge of the registration. After Ouyang Shua was done, he did not leave immediately. He asked, "General, what is the current situation?" When the officer was registering, he knew that the strange man before him had 10,000 soldiers. Hence, he did not ignore Ouyang Shua's question. He simply replied, "The Lord of Martial Peace is a godly commander. He sent General Ing Bao to the back of the stone wall and successfully took down Chongping Pass, cutting off the Zhao army from the hinterland of Handan. General Wang Ling led a group of cavalry to the Little Dong Song River Valley, cutting off the Zhao army from the stone wall. Currently, the 400,000-strong main force of Zhao has been trapped in the Chongping River Valley, becoming trapped beasts. What? Ouyang Shuo was shocked. He did not expect Gaia to have predicted the situation to this extent. According to normal logic, the Zhao army would definitely lose at this stage. Something was not right. Something was very wrong. Firstly, Gaia would not have arranged such an unfair battle. Secondly, Di Chun and the rest had known about the situation beforehand. Why did they choose the Zhao army? Ouyang Shuo wouldn't believe it, even if he was beaten to death, if someone said that there were no variables in this. Unlike Ouyang Shuo, the lords who were queuing up behind him were elated when they heard the officer's reply. They thought that they had chosen the right side and were waiting to take advantage of the situation. Ouyang Shuo shook his head with a bitter smile. He left the registration point and went to look for his allies. Among them, Bai Hua and Feng Xiuhuang were both first-class earls with 3,000 soldiers. Other than Song Wan, who was a third-class earl, the rest were all second-class earls with 1,000 soldiers. As a result, the Mountain and Sea Alliance had a total of 20,500 soldiers, and all of them were cavalry. Among the cavalry, Lingxi County and Xuanlong County were the most elite. Their commanders were Generals Zhang Liao and Qin Xiao. Of course, no matter how magnificent they could not compare to the powerful formation of Shanhai County. Among the generals of Shanhai County, Shi Wansui and Eli had shown their faces before. Only Luo Shixin was exposed for the first time. This naturally attracted the envy of Bai Hua and the rest, especially Feng Xiuhuang. Her territory still did not have a proper general. When she saw Shanhai County's three generals, Shi Wansui, Eli, and Luo Shixin, she almost drooled. Speaking of which, Luo Shixin and Qin Xiong had crossed paths. When the two of them met, all sorts of feelings welled up in their hearts. Among the generals, Shi Wansui was skilled in both infantry and cavalry. Moreover, he was the most senior, so he was appointed as the main general by Ouyang Shuo. Zhang Liao and Eli were his deputies, and Qin Xiong and Luo Shixin were his deputies. Adding Mu Qing to the mix, the Mountain and Sea Alliance's army could only be described as extravagant. In order to make it easier to command, Ouyang Shuo discussed with Bai Hua and the others and decided to split the army into two teams of 10,000. Shanhai County's 10,000 riders formed their own platoon, led by the people from Shanhai County. Eli was the main commander, with Luo Shixin and Lin Yi as his deputies. The remaining 10,500 formed another team, with Zhang Liao as the commander and Mu Ging and Qin Xiong as his deputies. As the commander of the army, Shi Wansui was in command. As for lords like White Birch, they basically didn't need to go to the battlefield. As for Ouyang Shuo, after obtaining the Sky Demon Spear, he was somewhat eager to give it a try. His current strength was already sufficient to protect himself on the battlefield. Just as the members of the Mountain and Sea Alliance were reorganizing their troops, a battle announcement rang out. Battle announcement, Battle of Chongping. A total of 100 lords participated, with a total of 73,000 soldiers. Qin's camp has a total of 28 lords, with a total of 31,000 soldiers. Zhao's camp has a total of 72 lords, with a total of 42,000 soldiers. In this battle, all 100 lords with county-level territories participated, with not a single one missing. Among these lords, more than 80% were third-rank earls, who could only lead 500 soldiers. The rest were basically second-rank earls, who could lead 1,000 soldiers. As for second-rank earls and above, there were only Ouyang Shuo, Bai Hua, and Feng Xiuhuang. Di Chun and the others had used their connections to rope in two-thirds of the lords, which was indeed impressive. Unfortunately, Ouyang Shuo, Bai Hua, and Feng Xiuhuang's superiority in terms of nobility made up for the difference in numbers. The difference in military strength between the two sides wasn't too great. Battle announcement. Because the Qin's military strength is weaker than the Zhao's, according to the battle rules, the Qin's army will automatically receive a 20% increase in movement speed. It was actually a movement speed increase, which was quite rare. For the Mountain and Sea Alliance's army, which was made up entirely of cavalry, this was undoubtedly good news. Battle announcement. According to the results of the Nobility and Achievement Points test, the Qin's mutant representative is He Yu Wui, a third-rank marquis. The Zhao's mutant representative is Di Chun, a second-rank earl. Ouyang Shua's status as the mutant representative was unshakable. On the other hand, Di Chun had relied on his endurance in the Battle of Mai to finally surpass Lord Chunxin and become the mutant representative of the Zhao's camp. The Qin's 30,000-strong mutant army was settled in Guanglang City under the command of General Meng Ao. After the army was settled, the members of the Mountain and Sea Alliance went to Ouyang Shua's tent to discuss matters. Ouyang Shua explained the situation he had learned to the other allies. The calm martial Lord Bai Qi had 5 generals under him, namely Wang Qi, Meng Ao, Wang Ling, Huan Qi, and Ing Bao. After surrounding the Zhao army, they still had 500,000 soldiers. There was no need to introduce the left minister Wang Qi. He had been at odds with General Lien Pe for 3 years and was now leading 200,000 soldiers to the Old Horse Ridge. He was building a camp at the Old Horse Ridge to the west, blocking the Zhao army's way out of the river east. Guanglang City's General Meng Ao was leading 150,000 soldiers to build a camp at the southern front. The Zhao army's way out of the Pill Water Valley was also blocked. Wang Ling and Ing Bao, the 2 ambushers, had now firmly established themselves. Wang Ling led 25,000 iron cavalry and 30,000 infantry to build a camp at the intersection of the Old Pass and the Little Eastern Song River. The Zhao army was cut off from the Stone Great Wall. Ing Bao led 25,000 iron cavalry and 10,000 infantry to build a camp at the northeast of the Stone Great Wall. The Tying Mountains were completely blocked. Finally, Huan Qi led 50,000 iron cavalry and hid behind Guanglang City as the main reserve force. As for General Bai Qi's residence, it was located on the Wolf Mountain outside of Guanglang City. Like the Qin army, the Zhao army also had 500,000 soldiers. 400,000 of them were trapped in the Chongping district. The remaining 100,000 soldiers were stationed at the Old Pass fortress. The Old Pass was also the Zhao army's main grain storage. Even without Handan support, the rations stored at the Old Pass were enough to support the entire army for 2 months. Such a strange situation left by Hua and the rest scratching their heads. This is Gia crazy? In this situation, the Qin army is sure to win. What's the point of fighting this war? They could just wait to collect the contribution points. Siege Lion was the first to speak. I think you're crazy. Guya must have his reasons for making such arrangements. Dragon searching acupuncture point immediately retorted. All right, stop arguing. Feng Xiaohuang interrupted this pair of enemies. Even if Gai Yashio is a fool, Di Chun and the others are not stupid. Why would they jump into the trap with their eyes wide open and even openly issue a challenge to us? Mr. Gong, what do you think the Zhao army can do to break out of this situation? Bai Hua did not participate in the argument. Instead, she looked at Commander Zhu and asked for his opinion. Like Ouyang Shua, she trusted professional strategists. According to the current situation and the trend of history, the next step is for the Zhao army to fight to the death and attempt to take down the royal tomb. Then, they will meet up with the troops stationed at the Old Pass and obtain rations. Zhu Sheng did not immediately express his opinion. Instead, he first analyzed the situation and said, in history, the breakout this time, including the subsequent breakouts, all ended in failure. In the end, the 400,000 Zhao army had no choice but to surrender because of a lack of rations. Therefore, I believe that the key to the Zhao army's victory is the breakout at the beginning. At this time, the Zhao army still has a few days' worth of rations. Furthermore, They're fighting with their backs to the wall. Their morale is at its peak, and their stamina is still intact. In history, the breakout this time was almost successful, but it ended in failure. Now, the 40,000-plus mutants from the Zhao army are the biggest variable in this battle. They're also the key to breaking out of this situation. They're the only hope for the Zhao army to turn the situation around. Ouyang Shuo frowned and said doubtfully, "According to what you said, the Zhao army has an additional 40,000-plus mutants, but doesn't the Qin army also have 30,000? In terms of combat power, I don't think they are inferior to the 40,000-strong army." "That's right. Not to mention the elite cavalry that Big Brother brought. Even with the cooperation of our Mountain and Sea Alliance, a difference of 10,000 soldiers is not enough to change the direction of the battle." Dragon-seeking acupuncture point was also doubtful. Also, with Di Chun and the rest cautiousness, such a small advantage in military strength is not enough for them to take the risk to join the Zhao army. There must be other variables. Feng Qiuhuang said, "What if, and I'm saying what if, Di Chun and the rest brought a large number of rations pills to supply the Zhao army?" Lao AI followed up with a bold hypothesis. "When it comes to rations pills, Wui has the most say." "Wui, do you think this is possible?" Baihua asked. Ouyang Shuo thought for a while and shook his head firmly. "Impossible. The main force of the Zhao army was more than 400,000. In addition to the consumption of the war horses and the mutant army themselves, even if they use it sparingly, they would need at least 600,000 rations pills a day. Even if Di Chun and the rest could prepare for such a huge consumption, they would not be able to afford it. In other words, it would be 6,000 gold coins a day. In less than 10 days, Di Chun and the rest would go bankrupt. Moreover, with Shanghai County's production capacity, they can only produce 5,000 rations pills a day. Millions of rations pills would need to be prepared in advance, and how many units of food would be consumed? With Di Chun and the rest's strength and the recent food crisis, it is impossible to achieve. For a moment, the meeting was in a deadlock. To be continued. Chapter 265. Just as the members of the Alliance of Mountains and Seas were at a stalemate, Mu Lanyue suddenly stepped forward. When her brothers and sisters were discussing, Mu Lanyue would usually sit at the side and listen quietly. When she stood up, she immediately attracted everyone's attention. The young girl was heartless and did not have stage fright. She said in a sweet voice, "Actually, I think Sir Gongyu is right. The key lies in the mutant army." Haven't we discussed this before? They won't be able to break the stalemate." Siege Lion said casually. Ouyang Shuo waved his hand to stop the discussion. He smiled at Mu Lanyue and said encouragingly, You must have some new ideas? Tell me about it." Yes. With Ouyang Shuo's encouragement, Mu Lanyue was even more confident. She continued, "I think my brothers and sisters have fallen into the same mindset. They believe that the Zhao Kingdom's mutant army will be like us, arriving at the Zhao Kingdom's main camp and staying with the main army. What if Gaia did not make such an arrangement and instead stationed the mutant army at the stone wall behind the Zhao Kingdom's camp? What will happen?" Ouyang Shuo was shocked. A bolt of lightning flashed across his mind. All the mysteries seemed to vanish into thin air. He looked up in bewilderment and happened to meet Zhu Sheng's gaze. For a moment, everyone was stunned by Mu Lanyue's bold idea. This doesn't conform to the war setting, right?" Siege Lion said without confidence. Xuanlong shook his head and said seriously, "The stone wall is one of the main camps of the Zhao Kingdom. If Gaia really made such an arrangement, it does not violate the war setting." Ouyang Shuo was almost certain that the biggest variable had been solved by Mu Lanyue. He looked at Mu Lanyue with relief and gave her a silent compliment. He then turned to Zhu Sheng and said, "Sir Gongyu, please use hypothesis to predict the course of the war." Although the others knew that something was wrong if the mutant army arrived at the stone wall, they could not tell how it would affect the war. Only Zhu Sheng could solve this problem. Zhu Sheng composed himself, and after some calculations in his mind, he said, "If the enemy's mutant army really does descend at the pass, then it will be very beneficial to the state of Zhao. They have two choices. One is to send troops to attack Bao's troops north of the Great Stone Wall and defeat them, reopening the road to Handan. Secondly, they can work together with the main force of the Zhao army and attack Wang Ling's army from the north and south, defeating them and restoring the communication channel between the main force of the Zhao army and the Old Pass, allowing the Zhao army to escape. They could even first defeat Bao's troops, then coordinate with the main force to attack Wang Ling's troops. No matter what, we can break the cage set by the calm martial lord by Qi. After listening to Zhu Sheng's analysis, the tent fell silent once more. Sir, there's something I don't understand. Feng Qiuhuang said solemnly. Attacking Bao's tribe is reasonable. But to cooperate with the main force of the Zhao army to attack Wang Ling's troops, what was the difference between this and them landing in the main camp of the Zhao army? Isn't it all the same? Otherwise, Zhu Shou explained confidently. The main defense of the camp built by Wang Ling's troops is the Zhao army's main force in the southwest direction. As for the defenders at the Old Pass in the north, because of Bao's troops, they will not be able to defend against them. Defending one side and defending two sides at the same time, the pressure of defending one side cannot be compared. In history, the Old Pass once sent 30,000 infantry to attack Wang Ling's troops and almost succeeded. Think about it. If you add in the 40,000 mutant soldiers, 70 to 80,000 soldiers will be able to charge out of the Old Pass. This subordinate estimates that before reinforcements arrive, Wang Ling's troops will be completely annihilated. Zhu Shou's analysis was incisive and hard to refute. Ouyang Shuo looked around and said, now that things have come to this, we need to prepare for the worst. Even if we take 10,000 steps back, even if the main force of the Zhao army manages to break through, they will have to pay a heavy price. The scales of victory will still tilt towards Qin. Therefore, there is no need for everyone to be discouraged. Prepare what you need to do. He looked at Bai Hua and Feng Qiuhuang, then said, I'll leave the matter of contacting the other lords to you. Bai Hua and Feng Qiuhuang nodded, indicating that there was no problem. All right, everyone can disperse. I need to go out and see the calm martial lord. This is only our speculation without any proof. Will the calm martial lord believe you? Bai Hua was slightly worried. No matter what, we have to give it a try. Ouyang Shuo was also uncertain, but his expression was firm. Zhu Shou walked over and said, Marquis, before you meet the calm martial lord, this subordinate suggests that Marquis pay a visit to Guanglang City's General Meng Ao. No matter what, he is our direct superior. Ouyang Shuo was startled and said embarrassedly, Mister's right, I was rude. General Meng Ao's residence was located in Guanglang City's Yamen. With Ouyang Shuo's identity as a mutant representative, his journey was naturally smooth. Soon, he met Bai Qi's subordinate. Meng Ao was known for his steadiness and meticulousness in battle. Thus, Bai Qi entrusted him with the heavy responsibility of guarding the southern line against the Zhao army's deputy general, Zhao Zhuang. No matter how Zhao Zhuang attacked, Meng Ao stood firm. In history, Meng Ao had served under King Zhaoxiang, King Xiaowen, King Zhuangxiang, and Emperor Qin. He had led the army on numerous expeditions and achieved many military merits. Not only that, Meng Ao's son, Meng Wu, and grandsons, Meng Tian and Meng Yi, were the backbone of Qin. 3 generations of the Meng family served Qin, conquering cities and conquering lands. They had contributed greatly to Emperor Qin's unification of the 6 states. How can a mutant be without clothes? I pay my respects to General. Ouyang Shuo did not dare to be negligent. In truth, Meng Ao did not attach much importance to the Qin army of 30,000 mutants. The meeting with Ouyang Shuo was just a routine one. There was no intention of getting close. Meng Ao nodded lightly and asked, Why do you want to see this general? Ouyang Shuo could sense Meng Ao's intention of distancing himself, but for the sake of victory, he continued, reporting to General, I am here to report military intelligence. When a military intelligence was mentioned, Meng Ao was startled. He did not dare to be negligent and said seriously, What military intelligence is there? Quickly tell me. Generals should know that our mutant army has arrived at the Qin and Zhao camps. According to reports, the Zhao camp has 42,000 mutants. As for their encampment, we do not know. Meng Ao's eyes turned cold. This is your so-called military intelligence? Nonsense. The main force of the Zhao army has been surrounded by us. They are running low on rations and can only last for 10 days. Even if there are 40,000 mutants, it will only increase the consumption of rations. It will only bring harm to the situation. So what if it's worth it for you to come and meet me? Meng Ao was enraged. A monstrous aura unconsciously spread out from his body. As a general, he killed many people, not to mention the fact that he was a general of the Qin army. Ouyang Shuo felt his body turn cold. A bloody smell assaulted his face. He instantly fell into a sea of blood. Fortunately, he was not a newbie on the battlefield. He had seen blood and had consecrated light before. The inner cannon of the yellow arch in his body circulated on its own, dispelling Meng Ao's bloody aura without causing him any discomfort. In truth, in just a blink of an eye, Ouyang Shuo returned to normal. Meng Ao's eyes narrowed. He could control his aura freely. The reason he did that was to show Ouyang Shuo his strength. He wanted to let him know that the army was not a game, and he could not do as he pleased. What he didn't expect was that the young man in front of him, who was young and had a delicate appearance, would actually be able to easily neutralize his might without moving an inch. Only now did he know that the person opposite him was not simple. Ouyang Shuo knew that his actions had finally gained Meng Ao's respect. The latter no longer looked down on him and was willing to listen to his opinion. Why else would it be said that strength was the most important in the army? Gaining respect didn't mean that he could convince Meng Ao. Ouyang Shuo continued to speak humbly. General doesn't know that our mutant army does not always descend at a fixed location. If the mutant army descends at the pass, it will be a huge variable. We have to be on guard. What kind of person was Meng Ao? He instantly understood what Ouyang Shuo meant. If the pass really increased 40,000 soldiers, it would have a huge effect on the situation. He didn't dare to be slow. Do you have evidence? In the army, information came first. It was a taboo to make decisions without evidence. Ouyang Shuo shook his head and simply said, "This is just a guess. There is no evidence. Just based on your speculation, how can it be counted?" Meng Ao's expression turned ugly again. It was a good thing he knew how important this matter was, and Ouyang Shuo was not a person who spoke without thinking, so he didn't explode again. This was Ouyang Shuo's brilliance. He knew that this kind of important information related to the war, whether it was verified or not, as a general of the army, Meng Ao would not and could not easily ignore it. Therefore, he did not make up any evidence and directly admitted that this was just his guess. Although it is only a guess, there is a 50% chance of it being true. General, this matter is related to the entire war. Should we report it to the calm martial ruler? Ouyang Shuo's words were a taboo in the army. He was asking his superior to report to a higher rank. If Ouyang Shuo was really Meng Ao's subordinate, then he was courting death. Ouyang Shuo was also helpless. The battlefield was constantly changing, and he was worried that if Meng Ao hesitated, he would miss the best time to report. If the calm martial ruler did not have the information in time, and the Zhao army succeeded, wouldn't that be bad? As expected, Meng Ao's eyes turned cold, and he looked at Ouyang Shuo with an unfriendly gaze. If he didn't know that these mutants would not stay here for long, he would have exploded. Facing Meng Ao's cold gaze, Ouyang Shuo did not feel any fear, and his attitude was firm. "Fine, come with me to see the calm martial ruler." It was unknown what Meng Ao thought of, but he finally compromised. To be continued. Chapter 266. To the east of Guanglang City, there was a mountain range with lush forests. It was rarely visited by humans, but frequented by wolves. The Han and Zhao people called it Wolf Mountain. This Wolf Mountain range ran from northwest to southeast, almost parallel to the Dan River. Its terrain was higher than that of Guanglang City and Chongping Pass. It was obviously the highest part of the Dan River Valley. Other than the trees and caves, the Wolf Mountain Range was mostly flat and wide. Looking from the top, the view was very wide. In terms of location, Wolf Mountain and Guanglang City were in the middle of the Qin Army's Old Horse Ridge camp, facing the Zhao Army's mansion to the north of Chongping Pass. Ouyang Shuo followed behind Meng Ao and walked up Wolf Mountain. After 3 years of confrontation, the wolves had disappeared without a trace. Only the white dung that could be seen everywhere under their feet was the mark of the former wolves' rule. The Lord of Martial Peace by Qi's mansion was located in the largest cave on Wolf Mountain. Under the jagged rocks of the cave wall, a huge bluestone slab was used as a table. On the wall, there was a large wooden drawing that was as tall as 2 people. The title of the drawing was Shandong Mountains and Rivers. Under the big drawing was Bai Qi, who was sitting up straight. He wore a suit of fine iron armor, a black brocade cloak with golden threads, and wielded a heavy longsword that only an Iron Eagle swordsman could possess. His temples were white like frost, and his body was as black as iron pillars. 2 thick lines on his mouth protruded from his rough and dark face. Seeing Bai Qi, Ouyang Shuo could not hide his excitement. Who was this person before him? He was the leader of the 4 great generals of the Warring States period. He was known as the #1 god of war, the killing god Bai Qi. In the Warring States period, no one could compete with him. In the end, he was sentenced to death by the king. This added a touch of sadness to the history of this god of war. Ouyang Shuo really had to thank Gaia for giving him the opportunity to talk to this legendary person from thousands of years ago. How can a man without clothes? Greetings, Lord of Martial Peace. Ouyang Shuo followed behind Meng Ao and bowed. Bai Qi raised his head. His triangular eyes were bright and full of expression. He looked at Meng Ao and said, "What are you doing here instead of guarding Guanglang City?" Meng Ao's heart trembled, and he didn't dare to be negligent. He repeated Ouyang Shuo's report. Only now did Bai Qi notice Ouyang Shuo, who was standing behind Meng Ao. He frowned and said, "Are you confident?" Bai Qi's disregard earlier had caused Ouyang Shuo to feel somewhat uncomfortable. As the lord of a territory and the noble marquis of Lian province, it had been a long time since he had tasted the feeling of being ignored. Habit was really a lethal poison. Ouyang Shuo adjusted his mentality and said respectfully, "I'm more than 50% sure." Bai Qi nodded and remained silent. Truth be told, Bai Qi was not someone who did not understand etiquette. Earlier, he had intentionally ignored Ouyang Shuo because he wanted to take him down a notch and establish his prestige in the army. As the commander-in-chief of the army, Bai Qi did not wish for an unruly army to exist. The sudden arrival of the mutant army was undoubtedly a sign of this. That was why he specially probed. When Bai Qi saw that Ouyang Shuo had quickly adjusted his state of mind, he nodded slightly, and a trace of appreciation flashed in his eyes. It was very important for a man to know when to yield and when to stand tall. He could always maintain a clear mind and recognize his own position. Compared to Meng Ao, Bai Qi was much more decisive. He said, "In that case, this old man will immediately send an order to Wang Ling and let him send someone to verify. After the verification, we will make arrangements." Bai Qi's decision was not inappropriate. Unverified information naturally could not be used as a basis for the commander-in-chief to make decisions. However, Ouyang Shuo still felt somewhat uneasy. However, the Lord of Martial Peace had already made his decision, so there was no point in saying anything more. Ouyang Shuo could only follow Meng Ao down the mountain and return to the Light Wolf City encampment. It was already afternoon when they returned. After Ouyang Shuo returned, Bai Hua and the others once again came to his tent to inquire about the news. After sharing the results of this trip with his allies, he said, "The wood has already been turned into a boat. The only thing we can do now is to actively prepare for war." After listening to the news brought by Ouyang Shuo, everyone's expression became somewhat dignified. Only the siege lion was relatively optimistic. He said with a smile, "Hey, everyone, don't be so gloomy. Even if Di Chen's evil plan succeeds, at worst, We will just fight. Little lion, you finally said something sensible. Xuanlong Acupuncture, who was the most familiar with the siege lion, teased. Go, go, go. The two's teasing finally dissolved the heavy atmosphere in the tent. Bai Hua also stood up and said, Wooey, the other 20 lords of Qin's camp have a total of 10,500 soldiers, which is only half of our mountain and sea alliances. Feng Wu and I have done some calculations. In this army, there are only 3,500 cavalry soldiers, and most of them are infantrymen. How do you think we should reorganize them? Ouyang Shuo had already expected this. He said, in this battle, the Yin-Huang alliance is indeed a level higher than us. In the previous two battles, we, the Mountain and Sea Alliance, achieved such a glorious result. In the end, only a few lords trust us. Wui, you don't have to be like this. The majority of the commoner lords have not been promoted to the county level. That is why this situation has occurred. Bai Hua consoled. That's right. Feng Qiuhuang continued. Wui, do you still remember Hua Hua? Hua Hua? Ouyang Shuo frowned and asked, Feng Wu, are you talking about the historical General Qintang, the Lord of Qingyun Town? That's right, that's him. However, it should be called Qingyun County now. This time, he still chose to be on our side. He is a lord worth roping in. Ouyang Shuo nodded and said, since that's the case, the troops they brought will be arranged accordingly. The 3,500 cavalrymen were placed under Zhang Liao's command, while the remaining infantrymen were placed under Qintang's command. In this battle, we are determined to send out our cavalry. We don't have the energy to take care of these infantry. That's fine. Feng Wu and I were thinking the same thing before. Bai Huan nodded in agreement. If that's the case, just say it directly. Why do you have to beat around the bush and ask for my opinion? Bai Hua, are you testing me? Ouyang Shuo teased. Bai Hua smiled sheepishly and didn't say anything. On the other hand, Feng Qiuhuang smiled smugly and said coquettishly, that's right, I'm testing you. The atmosphere in the tent gradually became lively, and Ouyang Shuo felt relieved in his heart. All right, everyone, return to your tents. Let's see what happens tomorrow. Ouyang Shuo said. What else can it be? It will definitely be quiet for a few days before anything big happens. I hope so. Ouyang Shuo felt uneasy. Zhao Camp, Old Pass. Just as Mulan Yu had guessed, Gaia had indeed set up the assembly point for the Zhao Camp's mutant army at the checkpoint on the 100-mile stone wall. In Di Chen's tent, the members of the Yin-Huang alliance had gathered. How was it? Did everything go smoothly? Warwolf asked Di Chun, who had just returned from the Old Pass. In the Yin-Huang alliance, Suicide Breaker had become estranged from Di Chun due to the Shanghai County incident, and Di Chun was gradually isolated. His only ally was Feng Qiuhuang's cousin, Feng Tianlai. On the other hand, Lord Chunxin used the influence of the original Spring and Autumn Alliance to rope in Feng Qingyang, Xiongba, and Piaolingwan. In addition, Military Kill Breaker, who had been particularly close to him recently, occupied half of the Yin-Huang alliance. In the Yin-Huang alliance, only Warwolf remained neutral and became the mediator between Di Chun and Lord Chunxin. Therefore, although the Yin-Huang alliance did not have a leader, it was still led by Di Chun, Lord Chunxin, and Warwolf, followed by Feng Qingyang and Xiongba, followed by Military Kill Breaker, Piaolingwan, and Feng Tianlai. Di Chun naturally knew that because of Lord Chunxin's existence, his situation in the Yin-Huang alliance was very bad. Fortunately, with the help of Mu Ye's cautiousness, his achievement points had increased greatly. This time, he had successfully replaced Lord Chunxin as the representative of the Zhao camp, once again suppressing Lord Chunxin and gaining the upper hand. In addition, the inside information about the Battle of Chongping was also obtained by Di Chen's family. Therefore, in terms of the Battle of Chongping, Di Chun still had the absolute authority, forcing Lord Chunxin to temporarily bow his head. Di Chun did not hesitate to answer Warwolf's question. Everything went smoothly. The Old Pass General has already agreed to our plan of action. In order to prepare for the Battle of Chongping, Di Chun and the rest had put in a lot of effort. With the help of Warwolf's many military advisors, before the battle even began, they had repeatedly deduced and formulated a complete set of action plans. If this plan could be successfully implemented, it would definitely help Zhao completely turn the situation around. Hearing Di Chen's reply, the tent immediately became lively. "That's great. This time, we must definitely teach," said Wui a lesson. "That's right. He won't have the chance to be in the limelight anymore. Just wait to go back with his tail between his legs." War Wolf frowned, not interested in his companion's excessive optimism. He could not help but say, "This is only the first step. Isn't it a little too early to celebrate? Think about it. How many times have we suffered at the hands of said Wui? Haven't you learned your lesson? Anyone who looks down on him will not have a good ending." War Wolf, aren't you overestimating the morale of others and diminishing your own? Hearing this, Feng Qingyang was a little unhappy. How can it be the same this time? We have the upper hand. We have the upper hand. In front of 1,000,000 troops, said Wui, no matter how capable he is, can he fly to the sky? In the Yin-Huang alliance, Feng Qingyang was famous for his fearlessness. Only he dared to scold War Wolf like this. War Wolf was originally not good with words. After being scolded by Feng Qingyang, his face turned red, and he was so anxious that he could not speak. In the end, he could only say, "You are useless." All right. We're all brothers. There's no need to be like this." Qingyang was just being impulsive. War Wolf, don't make things difficult for him. Lord Chunshin came out to smooth things over. It seemed like he was not helping either side, but in fact he was siding with Feng Qingyang and helping him out. War Wolf turned his head away, not saying a word. Di Chun watched coldly from his side. He knew that the Yin-Huang alliance's biggest weakness was that its members were not united, and they often formed cliques. This was the helplessness of a large force. No one was willing to submit to anyone, and everyone had their own little schemes. To be continued. Chapter 267. Let's all go back. There is a fierce battle waiting for us tomorrow, Di Chun said. The atmosphere in the tent was already strange, but hearing Di Chen's words, everyone was happy to find a way out of this awkward situation. They all left and returned to their own tents. The next morning, there was movement in the encampment of the Zhao army, confirming Ouyang Shua's uneasiness. It was mid-August, and the vast Shandong Mountain was clear. The yellow mountains rose and fell under the blue sky, and the river valleys were filled with the last signs of spring. At 8 o'clock in the morning, a mournful horn suddenly sounded in the everlasting valley. Banners flew north and south in two different directions like a large red cloud. The rumbling hooves of horses were like endless thunder, shaking the mountains. The 400,000-strong main force of Zhao was mobilized. The 150,000-strong army in the north was led by Zhao Kuo, heading straight for the royal tomb. The 250,000-strong army in the south was led by Deputy General Zhao Zhuang. They were in charge of intercepting Wang Bei's camp at Old Horse Ridge and Meng Ao's camp at Dan River in the south. The Zhao army's movements could not be hidden from Bai Qi. The only thing that surprised him was that the Zhao army was so eager to break out. This was not what he had expected. Thinking of the report from the mutant man yesterday, Bai Qi felt uneasy for the first time. Yesterday, he had sent someone to the royal tomb to verify the report, but there was no reply in just half a day. Bai Qi was not an ordinary person. He suppressed his uneasiness and climbed up the watchtower of Wolf Mountain to deploy the army. According to Bai Qi's plan, Meng Ao's army was in charge of attacking the Zhao army in the south, while Wang Bei's army was in charge of defending the northwest. Wang Bei's army was to split 60,000 soldiers to break through the Zhao army and head north to reinforce the royal tomb. Bai Qi had made it clear to Wang Bei that the Qin army's main force was not to defeat the Zhao army in Chongping Valley, but to break through the Zhao army's blockade and protect the royal tomb's camp. He wanted Wang Bei to split the army because Wang Bei's army was known for its bravery and was unstoppable. The mobilization of the army could not be hidden from Ouyang Shua and the rest. The 30,000-strong mutants were incorporated into Meng Ao's army and left the camp to fight Zhao Zhuang's army outside of Light Wolf City. Ouyang Shua was well aware that the alliance of mountains and seas coalition army was made up of elite cavalry, and that they weren't suited for frontal combat. He asked General Meng Ao for permission to break out of the encirclement and head north to reinforce the royal tomb camp. Meng Ao had always been cautious when it came to using troops. Although he knew that Ouyang Shua's words were reasonable, he didn't dare to make a decision on his own. He simply reported Ouyang Shua's proposal to the Lord of Martial Peace, Bai Qi, and asked him to make a decision. After listening to the messenger's report, Bai Qi's eyes narrowed. He knew that with Meng Ao's steadiness, with the 150,000 soldiers of the southern lines, it was enough to delay Zhao Zhuang's army. On the other hand, the 60,000 assault troops led by Wang Xiai were slightly lacking. He didn't expect that Wu says Wui's insight was actually so keen. Order the Inhuman Army's cavalry to meet up with Huan Qi's army and prepare to attack at any time, Bai Qi ordered. Yes, sir. When Ouyang Shua received the order, his spirits rose. Huan Qi's army of 50,000 were all elite cavalry. If they joined up with Huan Qi's troops, it would be a life-and-death battle. Among all the lords, only Ouyang Shua personally went to battle. The rest of the lords stayed behind to guard Light Wolf City. Wui, with so many generals leading the army, wouldn't it be better for you to stay behind and command Light Wolf City? Why do you still have to go personally? What if something goes wrong? Bai Hua didn't agree with Ouyang Shua personally going into battle. Whether it was Ouyang Shua himself or the 10,000 elite cavalry of Shanhai County, they were the core of the Qin Kingdom's Inhuman Army. If Ouyang Shua died, the Qin Kingdom's camp would lose everything, and the losses would outweigh the gains. That's right, Brother Wui. Didn't you dislike going into battle in the past? Mulan Yue also tried to persuade him. Ouyang Shua's heart warmed, but he still shook his head resolutely. He smiled and said, "Don't worry, my strength is no longer what it used to be. It's more than enough for me to protect myself. Moreover, I have the Imperial Guard Brigade to protect me. Nothing will go wrong. I didn't go into battle recklessly, but I did it for a reason. Tell me about it." Bai Hua didn't deny it. First, the Battle of Chongping is not like other battles. Meng Ao and the others are generals who have been through hundreds of battles. There is no room for us to display our abilities, and we can only act according to their commands. Therefore, there is no such thing as me commanding the army. Second, the biggest variable in this battle is the Old Pass. The result will be clear in this battle. I have to personally go to the Royal Tombs camp to take a look. Otherwise, I won't be able to rest easy. After listening to Ouyang Shua's explanation, Bai Hua and the others were silent. If that's the case, then be careful on your journey. Ouyang Shua nodded and mounted his green beetle horse. He picked up his sky demon spear and prepared to depart. The 30,000 Inhuman Army separated at the entrance of Guanglang City's camp. Chun Tang led 7,000 infantrymen and followed Meng Ao's army to the north to intercept Zhao Zhuang's army. Ouyang Shua led 24,000 elite cavalry and marched majestically towards the south of Guanglang City, meeting up with Huan Qi's army that was hidden there. Zhao Zhuang's army left the camp in two directions to kill their way to the Qin army's camp. Who would have thought that the front army would encounter the Qin army's main force after traveling for less than 2 miles? In front of the Old Horse Ridge was a large banner with the word Wang. In the south of the Dandong Valley was a large banner with the word Meng. The Qin army left their camp to fight, obviously not wanting to be blocked by the Zhao army within their camp. Zhao Zhuang is also a veteran general. When he saw the Qin army's formation, he knew that today will be a battle to the death. He immediately ordered, "The two armies will split up and attack the Qin army. Don't let the Qin main force pass Chongping Pass." In an instant, the war drums sounded and the two armies engaged in a storm-like battle at Chongping Valley. The four armies clashed together in an earth-shattering manner. The Black Qin army and the Red Zhao army were like two unstoppable torrents, pouncing towards each other with the force of a tsunami. The sounds of collision were like the rumbling of thunder in the valley, like the raging waves crashing into the mountains. Broadswords and scimitars danced in the air, spears and javelins whizzed past, A dense rain of arrows covered the sky and the earth. The muffled sounds of killing and short roars caused the mountains and rivers to tremble. The earth-shattering battle cries resounded through the valley, reverberating like a torrent, causing one's heart to race. These were the two strongest armies in the Warring States period. Both had a glorious record of winning and never losing. Both had the courage to face death. Men of steel collided. Death did not stop. Hideous faces, bloodied swords and blades, deep roars, and dust filled the air. The entire valley was shrouded in the tragic atmosphere of a primitive battle. The 7,000-foot soldiers led by Chun Tang were like a canoe in the ocean, facing the raging waves. They were quickly drowned in the waves and disappeared without a trace. They could only struggle bitterly. Bai Hua and the rest stood on the walls of Guanglang City. Looking at the tragic battle outside the city, their hearts couldn't help but tremble. Such a large army, such a strong army, and the less than 10,000-foot soldiers of the mutants were really too insignificant. Sparks and the other leaders of the Qin camp were happy and worried at the same time. They were happy about the rising contribution points, but worried about the troops fighting on the battlefield and how many soldiers will survive. The key for the Southern Army was whether Wang Qi can lead his troops to break through the siege. But seeing that 2 hours had passed and Wang Qi's iron cavalry still could not break through the Zhao cavalry formation, Bai Qi gradually frowned. The valley where the royal tomb camp was located was narrow. Although it was good for defense, there was no place to store large numbers of soldiers. The only way to strengthen this key camp was to maintain a large number of reinforcements at all times. From the looks of it, it was the most critical moment. Zhao Kuo personally led 150,000 soldiers to attack fiercely. Even if the royal tomb fought to the death, it was probably time. Reporting to Lord of Martial Peace, the royal tomb camp is in an emergency. Old Sima of the Central Army looked at a red flag waving rapidly downstairs and shouted urgently. The veins on his face were bulging. Bai Qi's face darkened. Order Huan Qi's troops to move out immediately. Yes. Old Sima immediately turned a large red flag on the watchtower. This was the Qin army's emergency order for the main support army. Huan Qi, who was at the bottom of the mountain, was already at the watchtower. When he saw the large red flag waving, he immediately mounted his horse and gave the order to attack. All troops move out. Kill, kill, kill. The reply to Huan Qi was a heaven-shaking war cry. Huan Qi did not trust the mutant army led by Ouyang Shuo and arranged for them to bring up the rear. Ouyang Shuo was not annoyed and let Huan Qi's 50,000 cavalry charge at the front. In a mutant army, Shanghai County's 10,000 cavalry were at the front, while Zhang Liao brought up the rear with 14,000 cavalry. This way, Zhang Liao was right in the middle of the army and could easily give orders. Although Ouyang Shuo had gone out to battle, he did not take over command of the army. It was still led by the generals. He was at the front of the army with the Forbidden Brigade protecting him. On his two sides were Shi Wansui and Wang Feng. Over 70,000 cavalry galloped out and broke out of the encirclement towards the north. Zhao Zhuang's army was entangled with the main force of the Qin army. When they saw the dust rising from their side, they knew that something was wrong. However, they could not split their forces and could only watch as the black cavalry charged towards the north. Just as the Zhao army was distracted, Wang Feng let out an angry roar and raised the flag beside him. The cavalry charged forward and broke through the Zhao army in an instant. Zhao Zhuang panicked, and with a shout, he immediately led a group of cavalry to cut in and block the back of the Qin army. Just like this, Wang Xi's cavalry managed to charge past the Zhao army, and there were about 30 to 40,000 of them. Zhao Zhuang had wanted to split his army to chase after them, but was intercepted by Meng Ao's tens of thousands of foot soldiers. A dense rain of arrows came whistling over, and it was a chaotic battle between foot soldiers and cavalry. Both sides did not allow the other to escape, and the hundreds of thousands of soldiers were entangled in a chaotic battle. When Huan Qi's army reached the northern battlefield, The scene in front of him made his eyes almost pop out of their sockets. Looking from afar, the Qin army's flag on the royal tomb camp was almost completely covered. It looked like the entire army was about to be wiped out. Huan Qi knew that things were not good and shouted, "Death battle horn!" More than 30 ox horn bugles sounded in a short and intense manner, and this fresh force that had not participated in the battle pounced towards the camp with an overwhelming force. To be continued. Chapter 268. He turned his attention to the northern front just before the battle started. Zhao Kuo split the 150,000 soldiers into 3 groups. The main force of 100,000 infantry was split into 2 groups, changing every hour to attack in turns, not giving Wang Ling's camp any time to breathe. The 50,000 elite cavalry guarded the flanks, focusing on intercepting Wang Ling's cavalry hidden in the valley for a surprise attack. By now, everyone in the Zhao army understood that this battle concerned the life and death of the entire army, so everyone fought to the death. Zhao Kuo waved his flag on the hill, and the 50,000 infantry spread out in formation to the sound of war drums and horns, charging towards the Qin camp. The archers on both sides provided cover with arrows, while the vanguard immediately pushed wooden planks and trench carts up the trenches. But when they came across the trenches, countless mounds of earth were thrown in. After rushing through the trenches, ladders and all kinds of wooden ladders swarmed up the rampart, and warriors with scimitars, shields, and spears surged up. After an hour, the vanguard felt a little weak, and the second vanguard immediately replaced it with a fierce attack, with the roars of war shaking the heavens. After 4 rounds of continuous bloody battles, Wang Ling's camp was already in a very tight spot. The worst part was that Wang Ling's 25,000 cavalry hidden in the valley, under the obstruction of Zhao Kuo's 50,000 cavalry, had completely lost their ability to attack the Zhao army from the back. Moreover, the Zhao army kept attacking fiercely, and there was no time to repair the mechanical crossbows, fierce fire oil tanks, giant stone catapults, and other large weapons that broke down. Even with Wang Ling's quick reflexes and immediately abandoning the defense on the north and changing the 10,000 cavalry to infantry and all 30,000 infantry to defend the southern rampart, they were still in danger. The Zhao army's attacks were still stronger than the last, and their ferocity and bravery pressured the remaining 30,000 Qin soldiers to the point that they could not hold on any longer. But at this critical moment, the 70,000 infantry from the Great Wall of Shi dynasty attacked, and the Qin camp was instantly drowned by the red waves on both sides. Wang Ling waved his long sword and jumped out of the trenches like a bloody lion, shouting, "Old Qin brothers, fight to the death! Kill!" In an instant, all the Qin soldiers abandoned their weapons and jumped out of the trenches, waving their swords and spears, and began the fiercest head-on fight. Unfortunately, no matter how brave they were, they could not overcome the difference in military strength. For this battle, Di Chun and the others had racked their brains and brought the most elite soldiers of their territory. The 40,000-plus mutants army and the 30,000 Zhao army at the Old Pass descended from the heavens and headed straight for the north side of the royal tomb camp. At this time, Wang Ling, who was on the north side of the camp, had already given up on defending under the pressure of Zhao Kuo's army. Now that the enemy was attacking from the north, he was caught off guard and attacked from the front and rear. The north side was in a state of emergency, and Wang Ling could only sigh helplessly. He really did not have the strength to deploy troops to defend the north side. He could only watch helplessly as the northern side of the camp was instantly lost. Di Chun and the others were standing on the watchtower of the Old Pass, watching the battle outside the city. They seemed full of confidence. In fact, the battle had developed as Di Chun and the others had expected. No matter it was the Qin army or the Zhao army, they were equally strong, well-equipped, fearless, and ferocious. The last straw that crushed the Royal Mausoleum's camp was the 40,000 mutant army. With the addition of this new force, they were like a ferocious tiger under the personal leadership of the war wolf. With the momentum of a ferocious tiger descending the mountain, They used the swords and spears in their hands to stab into the abdomen of Wang Ling's army, cutting their vitals. Every blade drew blood, and every spear was fatal. Seeing the men beside him fall one by one, Wang Ling let out an indignant roar. Wen Baiqi was a chiliarch. Wang Ling was a centurion of the Iron Cavalry. Later on, he was the main general of the cavalry of the Qin army. Not only was he fierce, he was also cunning and unconventional. Baiqi's first choice for a surprise attack was Wang Ling. In the current situation, both sides were fighting at close quarters. The Qin army could only fight to the death until reinforcements arrived. Wang Ling's cunning and quick-wittedness could not be of any use at this time. How sad was this? By the time Huan Qi led his troops to reinforce them, Wang Ling's army was almost completely destroyed. Zhao Kui sat on a hill commanding the army. Seeing the Qin army coming from the south to reinforce them, he smiled coldly. He ordered the army that had attacked from the old pass to continue to surround and destroy the remaining forces under Wang Ling's command. They had to kill them all and open up a path between the main force of the army and the old pass. At the same time, Zhao Kui ordered the main force that he had brought with him to turn around and prepare to attack Huan Qi's troops. After a fierce battle in the morning, only about 120,000 of the 150,000 soldiers were left. Even so, Zhao Kui was confident that he could stop Huan Qi's army. Zhao Kui ordered the infantry to get into formation and face Huan Qi's army head-on. The cavalry temporarily retreated behind the infantry and reorganized their formation. Then, they worked together with the infantry to attack Huan Qi's Iron Cavalry. After the previous great defeat, Zhao Kui had clearly matured a lot. He was no longer the person he was in the past. His formation was tight, not giving the enemy any chance to take advantage of. Seeing the formation of the Zhao army, Huan Qi's heart tightened. He knew that even if he led his troops to break through Zhao Kui's army, Wang Ling's army would still be in danger. The best choice was to retreat immediately. However, when he thought of how Wang Ling was still struggling in the camp and the thousands of Qin soldiers still waiting for his rescue, Huan Qi could only throw away all his worries and considerations and fight to the death. If it was just Huan Qi and his 50,000 soldiers, he had no confidence in breaking through the Zhao army's blockade. Luckily, the heavens did not want Qin dead. Behind him, there were still more than 20,000 mutant elite cavalry. With 74,000 well-rested elite cavalry against the 120,000 Zhao army that had just gone through a great battle, Huan Qi was confident that he could fight to the death and rescue Wang Ling's troops. The horn for a battle to the death sounded mournfully. The Qin Iron Cavalry fearlessly charged forward. The sound of the horn spread throughout the Shaodong-Tsang River Valley. Hearing the familiar sound of the horn, Wang Ling's army in the distance could not help but tear up. They knew that the reinforcements they had been waiting for had finally arrived. Only Wang Ling's heart tightened as he thought bitterly. The reinforcements are a step too late and are of no use. When Ouyang Shua led his troops to the battlefield, the scene he saw was no different from what Huan Qi had seen. The only difference was that he noticed that among the army attacking Wang Ling's troops, there was also a thick black torrent among the bright red of the Zhao army. Needless to say, this was definitely the mutant army of the state of Zhao. The scene in front of him indeed made Ouyang Shua's heart skip a beat. Luckily, he was already mentally prepared for such a scene. But when it really happened, he could not help but sigh in his heart. Seeing the horn for a battle to the death, Ouyang Shua did not have much time to think. He could only follow the army and charge towards Zhao Kui's army. According to Ouyang Shua's plan, even if he could not rescue Wang Ling's troops, he had to make Zhao Kui's army suffer greatly. At this moment, Huan Qi's military order came from the front. Huan Qi ordered the mutant cavalry to intercept the 40,000 Zhao Iron Cavalry, while Huan Qi himself led 50,000 Iron Cavalry to attack Zhao Kui's infantry formation. General Shi Wansui did not hesitate and immediately ordered the army to charge to the right, preparing to intercept the 40,000 Zhao Iron Cavalry that had already been reorganized. This was the first time that Shanghai County's cavalry would fight against elite cavalry with real swords and spears. It was also the best opportunity to test the strength of Shanghai County's cavalry. Ouyang Shua had no idea what the outcome would be. This time, the vanguard was changed from the Imperial Guard Brigade to the 2nd Brigade of the 1st Division. Deputy General Eli rode Rakshasa and ran at the front of the group. The 2nd Brigade was a true heavy cavalry unit and could be said to be one of the strongest heavy cavalry units in the cold weapon era. Under the leadership of Eli and Lin Yi, they clashed with the Zhao army like a flood of steel, stirring up a cloud of dust. The rumbling of horse hooves reverberated in the valley, forming the strongest sound in the battlefield. Ever since the Zhao introduced the Hu dress and archery, the cavalry had been their advantage. The cavalrymen of the Zhao army wore light and tight-fitting leather armor and were equipped with crescent blades. The Zhao light cavalry faced the heavy cavalry of the 2nd Brigade and the Imperial Guard Brigade, especially when both sides had enough distance to charge, and the difference in strength was obvious. The 2nd Brigade was like a heavy hammer, smashing a bloody path through the Zhao cavalry. Following this bloody path, the Imperial Guard Brigade showed their might again, helping the 2nd Brigade to block the Zhao cavalry from both sides, opening up a bloody path. Ouyang Shua followed beside the Imperial Guard Brigade, waving his Sky Demon Spear and using the Yang family spear techniques to the extreme, continuously knocking the enemies off their horses. The Sky Demon Spear's blood-sucking ability was activated, and the sound of the spear emitted a bewitching red light. Seeing the Marquis's power, the Shanghai County Cavalry's morale rose even higher, wanting to devour the enemy. Following the opening created by the 2nd Brigade and the Imperial Guard Brigade, the young General Luo Shixin led the 4th Brigade and the Independent Brigade, further penetrating the Zhao cavalry's formation. The Shanghai County Cavalry won the first battle, and Zhang Liao, who was in command, naturally didn't want to fall behind. He commanded the 14,000 Allied cavalry to quickly follow up, trying to further increase the battle success. Just like that, the elite Zhao cavalry was taught a harsh lesson due to their arrogance in front of the even more elite Shanghai County Cavalry, and they were caught off guard. Both Zhao Kuo, who was commanding on the hill, and Huan Qi, who was leading the army to attack Zhao Kuo's infantry, were shocked by the scene. Obviously, they didn't expect the mutant army to have such combat power. Zhao Kuo saw that the situation was not good, and if the enemy broke through their blockade, they might meet up with Wang Ling's army. This was not what he wanted to see, so he immediately shouted, 1,000 cavalry, follow me to intercept and kill. Zhao Kuo's 1,000 winged cavalry were all Zhao cavalry, known for their lightness and ferocity, and all of them were highly skilled. Their war horses were also unique in the world. Like a whirlwind, the 1,000 cavalrymen galloped down the hill, and just before the 2nd Brigade could break through the Zhao cavalry, they reached the back of the 2nd Brigade and blocked their path. The 2nd Brigade was a traditional heavy cavalry, and its advantages and disadvantages were very obvious. The advantage was that when they charged, they were indomitable and unmatched. The disadvantage was that their turning radius was too large, and their mobility and agility were too low. Facing the 1,000 cavalrymen led by Zhao Kuo, they were immediately at a disadvantage. To be continued. Chapter 269. At the crucial moment, Zhao Kuo personally led 1,000 cavalry to stop Shanghai County's 2nd Brigade. In the eyes of the riders of the 2nd Brigade, the Zhao army's winged cavalry were like the drifting clouds in the sky. Just as they were about to pass by, they would disappear with a swing of their tang sabers. When they retracted their sabers and turned around, the Zhao army would follow them like a shadow and attack them. If they did not have well-practiced coordination in actual combat, it would be difficult to defend against this dazzling and powerful cavalry and archery unit. Luckily, with air holding them back, the 2nd Brigade formed a defensive formation and could protect themselves for a while. After all, the mutant cavalry was limited in strength. Even if they pierced through the 40,000 Zhao cavalry, they would not be able to reinforce the 2nd Brigade in time. Instead, They were held back by the Zhao cavalry. The Zhao cavalry were not to be trifled with. When they reacted, they immediately counterattacked, trying to use their advantage in numbers to surround the enemy. At the end of the day, the 20,000 mutant cavalry, other than a portion of the elite cavalry, could not compare to the Zhao cavalry. Especially the allied cavalry, they were even worse. Now that the 2nd Brigade was held back, only the Imperial Guard Brigade could act as the spearhead, charging left and right among the Zhao cavalry to break the encirclement. Shi Wansui took the lead and replaced Air as the arrowhead. Even Zhao Zhuang could not compare to such a fierce general, not to mention the other generals of the Zhao army. The battle was once again at a stalemate. With this delay, the remnants of Wang Ling's troops finally reached their end under the fierce attack of the Guguan army. Wang Ling looked around and said solemnly, "Brothers, let us sing without clothes for the last time." In the dead silence, Wang Ling's hoarse voice floated across the battlefield. "How can it be said to be without clothes? Row with my son. The king sends troops to repair my spears and spears. Hate with my son. How can it be said to be without clothes? Row with my son. The king sends troops to repair my spears and halberds. Fight with my son. How can it be said to be without clothes? Row with my son. The king sends troops to repair my armor and soldiers. Walk with my son." The solemn and stirring Qin was sung passionately by Wang Ling. Under the influence of their general, the soldiers started humming together, united against the enemy, valiant Qin, facing the national calamity together. Singing without clothes, the remnants of Wang Ling's troops charged towards the Guguan army, facing death with equanimity. The war wolves on the opposite side were also affected by the Qin army's bravery and solemnness and were speechless. "But this is war." Zhang Lang threw away his personal feelings and said coldly, "Kill." If the remnants of the royal mausoleum were a reef, representing the unyielding and stubborn nature of the old Qin people, then the red and black mixed army was like a raging wave, slamming against the reef with the power of the world. The already damaged reef immediately shattered into pieces and exploded, causing countless blossoms of blood to splatter everywhere. At this moment, one of the Lord of Martial Peace by Qi's 6 generals, General Wang Ling, died on the battlefield. Royal tomb. Huan Qi cried out in grief. When Huan Qi heard Qin Feng's unclothed, he had a bad feeling. In the end, he was unable to change the fate of the royal tomb and could only watch as his brother died on the battlefield. For a moment, the Qin army emitted a fearless and sorrowful voice that struck fear into the hearts of those who looked at it. At this moment, the 30,000 to 40,000 cavalrymen led by valiant General Wang Bei arrived. Hearing Huan Qi's sorrowful cry, Wang Bei's heart trembled as a bad premonition crept into his heart. Wang Bei led his troops to meet up with Huan Qi's army. Seeing the sorrowful air coming from Huan Qi's troops, he felt even more uneasy and asked in a trembling voice, "Huan Qi, how is the royal tomb's troops?" Wang Bei's question pulled Huan Qi back to reality. His voice was as cold as 9 feet of ice, striking fear into those who heard it. He said through gritted teeth, "Wang Ling is dead. We must avenge him." "What?" Wang Bei paled in shock. In the end, he had come a step too late and couldn't help but blame himself. Compared to Huan Qi's loss of composure, Zhao Ku was much more composed. He ordered the general of 1,000 cavalry to replace him in commanding the 1,000 cavalry, while he led the white cavalry back to the headquarters on the hill. Zhao Ku knew that Huan Qi's fierce attack had already caused the Zhao army to suffer greatly. Now that Wang Bei's troops had arrived, the Zhao army was in a precarious situation. Fortunately, at the crucial moment, the army of Guguan had fought hard and destroyed the remnants of the royal tomb's troops. Zhao Ku immediately ordered the army of Guguan to cross the camp and meet up with the main force of the army to defend against Huan Qi and Wang Bei's troops. "Great General, should we retreat to Guguan first?" The major in the army suggested to Zhao Ku. According to the major in the army, now that the passage between the main force and Guguan had been reopened, they should retreat to Guguan first before making any other plans. "No, Zhao Kuo refused decisively. It wasn't that he was conceited, but as the commander-in-chief of the army, Zhao Kuo thought further. Although Wang Ling's army had been destroyed, the main force of the Qin army was still there. If they retreated to Guguan now, then the army of Zhao Zhuang, who was responsible for blocking the Qin army on the southern front, would be caught in a pincer attack. It could be imagined that they would end up like Wang Ling's army. And once Zhao Zhuang's army was crippled, the state of Zhao would be powerless to reverse the situation. One had to know that within the state of Zhao, there was no longer a single soldier that could be deployed. In this case, the state of Zhao would still lose this great war. This was something that Zhao Kuo didn't want to see. Order the entire army to persevere a little longer. All the army will move south and must meet up with Zhao Zhuang's army. Zhao Kuo ordered decisively. Also, order Zhao Zhuang to pull back the defensive line and wait for reinforcements. Yes, sir. The major in the army immediately waved a flag and conveyed Zhao Kuo's order. Under Zhao Kuo's command, the entire Chongping Valley, the armies of Qin and Zhao, from the north to the south, intertwined with each other. It was a magnificent sight to behold. At the furthest north was Zhao Kuo's army that had joined up with Guguan's army. After a series of fierce battles, there were still 120,000 infantry and 35,000 cavalry left. Opposite Zhao Kuo's army was the allied army of Wang Bei and Huan Qi. All of them were cavalry. Together with the mutant army, there were more than 100,000 cavalry. Behind the allied army was Zhao Zhuang's army that was still entangled with the Qin army. After a series of battles, Zhao Zhuang's army was left with more than 200,000 infantry and cavalry. They were the other main force of the Zhao army. Facing Zhao Zhuang's army was Meng Ao's army and the remaining troops of Wang Bei. Meng Ao's army, including the mutant infantry, still had about 120,000 men. A portion of Wang Bei's army had been transferred away. Together with the losses incurred during the breakout, there were only about 120,000 left. Adding the two together, it was estimated to be 250,000 men. To the north of the 100-mile stone wall, Ing Bao's 35,000 men were stationed. Similarly, the Zhao army had 70,000 men stationed at the Guguan specifically to keep an eye on Ing Bao's army. Therefore, in terms of military strength, both sides were evenly matched. 6 armies intertwined with each other. It was a spectacle that had never been seen before. At this moment, it was a great test of the commander's ability. In this aspect, Bai Qi was clearly superior. The Lord of Martial Peace Bai Qi had been observing the battle from the watchtower of Wolf Mountain. Even the slightest change in the battle situation did not escape his eyes. The only variable was that he did not expect the sudden appearance of 40,000 elite mutant soldiers at the Guguan. They caught him off guard and caused Wang Bei's army to be annihilated. Looking at the current battle situation, both sides seemed to be evenly matched. Either side had the opportunity to surround and annihilate the other's army. Zhao Kuo could coordinate with Zhao Zhuang's army to attack Wang Bei's and Huan Qi's armies from the north and south. Similarly, Bai Qi could attack Zhao Zhuang's army from the north and south. It all depended on who was more skilled. In reality, the Qin army still had the advantage. Firstly, Wang Bei's and Huan Qi's armies had not experienced consecutive battles. Their soldiers were full of stamina. They were also the only army on the battlefield that had not experienced a major battle. Secondly, Wang Bei's and Huan Qi's armies were all cavalry. In terms of mobility and agility, they were much stronger than the Zhao army. In contrast, Zhao Kuo's army, other than the 30,000-odd cavalry, the rest were all infantry. How could they keep up with Wang Bei's and Huan Qi's cavalry? Thirdly, the Zhao army was afraid. After experiencing the despair of being surrounded, the Zhao army did not dare to advance rashly. They went south with all their might to fight the Qin army to the death. If their retreat route was cut off again, they would really want to cry, but have no tears. Zhao Kuo was not a mediocre person. He saw this and did not seek to annihilate the enemy. He only wanted to receive Zhao Zhuang's army and retreat to the Guguan together. The commanders of the two armies were not ordinary people. What Zhao Kuo lacked was battle experience. The recent series of battles were enough to teach him a lesson and improve rapidly. What kind of person was Bai Qi? When he saw the situation clearly, he decisively ordered Wang Bei's and Huan Qi's armies to gather together. They turned their horses around and headed south to attack Zhao Zhuang's army. When Huan Qi received the order, he looked at the opposite side unwillingly and said fiercely, "Retreat." When they received the order to retreat, the 2nd Brigade stopped tangling with the Zhao cavalry and quickly moved their horses south. At this time, the Forbidden Brigade and the other divisions appeared to receive the 2nd Brigade. With the help of Wang Bei's army, the mutant army successfully retreated from the Zhao cavalry. The two armies were entangled together. If they were to suddenly separate now, it would be a great test of the commander's abilities, especially Huan Qi's army and the mutant cavalry. If they retreated now, it would be equivalent to leaving their backs to the enemy. Therefore, the army could not retreat together. Otherwise, they would become easy targets for the enemy. Fortunately, whether it was Wang Xi, Huan Qi, Shi Wansui, or Zhang Liao, they were all very experienced generals. They knew how to arrange the rear guard troops, how to arrange the flanks, and how to arrange the frontline troops. In addition, Zhao Kuo's army was already exhausted from attacking the Royal Tombs camp. After that, they had to grit their teeth and block Huan Qi's army. Now, under the strict arrangements of the Qin commanders, seeing that they could not find a suitable opportunity to launch a surprise attack, they naturally went with the flow and allowed Huan Qi's army to retreat smoothly. Seeing the 100,000 Qin cavalry charging murderously towards Zhao Zhuang's army, Zhao Kuo could only raise his spirits. He ordered the Guwan army to change from the rear to the front. He led the troops south to receive Zhao Zhuang's army. The Guwan army had been conserving their strength and only charged out at the critical moment. Facing the already shaky Royal Tomb army, they still had some strength left. To be continued. Chapter 270. The calm martial ruler Bai Qi was good at analyzing the situation of the enemy and himself. Then he would use the right strategy and tactics to launch a destructive attack. His only goal was not to attack cities and seize territory, but to annihilate the enemy's strength. He was adept at attacking in the field, seeking annihilation in every battle. Ordering Wang Xi and Huan Qi's troops to give up on attacking Zhao Kuo's army and turn south to launch a pincer attack on Zhao Zhuang's army was the most direct manifestation of Bai Qi's military strategy. The failure of the plan to besiege the Zhao army did not disappoint Bai Qi. His next goal was to eliminate as much of the Zhao army's strength as possible to lay the foundation for the subsequent victory of the war. After witnessing the power of the inhuman cavalry, Huan Qi no longer underestimated the inhuman army. This time, Huan Qi did not let the mutant army bring up the rear. Wang Xi's 30,000 to 40,000 cavalrymen were responsible for bringing up the rear. 100,000 cavalry charged towards Zhao Zhuang's army with the force of a thunderbolt. Zhao Kuo's army of 150,000 soldiers had no choice but to chase after them while facing the dust stirred up by the cavalrymen. At this time, Zhao Zhuang's 200,000 strong army was fighting with Meng Ao's army in the south and Wang Ling's army in the west. In order to annihilate Zhao Zhuang's army, Bai Qi had already issued a death order for the two armies to keep Zhao Zhuang's army at all costs and not let them escape. Meng Ao received the order and ordered his infantry to circle behind Zhao Zhuang's army, blocking their path to the north. The infantry formed a defensive formation, like a metal chain, tightly entangling the Zhao Zhuang army. The Zhao army's deputy general Zhao Zhuang was also a seasoned veteran. Upon receiving Zhao Kuo's order, he immediately adjusted the formation of the army. He deployed the infantry to the south and formed a defensive formation to defend against the frontal assault of Meng Ao and the rest of Wang Xi's troops. He then moved the steel cavalry to the north and was responsible for breaking through the defensive chains set up by Meng Ao's army. The army of 400,000 to 500,000 moved about and killed each other in the valley of the Dan River. Bai Qi was overseeing the Wolf Mountain watchtower from above. With his excellent vision, he was able to accurately command the two armies to attack together. He was able to advance and retreat at will, firmly delaying Zhao Zhuang's army. Zhao Zhuang was in the middle of the battle and could not see the whole situation clearly. He could only passively face the enemy. After a few rounds of probing, Zhao Zhuang had completely given up on relying on his own strength to escape. He mobilized the army again, preparing to defend against the Qin cavalry charging southwards. Zhao Zhuang knew very well that his mission was to delay them until Chief General Zhao Kuo's army arrived to reinforce them. At that time, it would be the time to counterattack. At that time, it would be hard to tell who would emerge victorious. After Zhao Zhuang rearranged the formation, there were 100,000 foot soldiers in the center and 50,000 cavalry on the two flanks. In total, there were 200,000 soldiers dressed in red uniforms. They were like a maple forest in autumn, fiery red. The cavalry on the two flanks were all Yin Shan Huma. Each of them had a long saber in their hands and a curved bow in their hands. 1,000 cavalry under a banner. The troops were extremely orderly. According to the situation of the battlefield, the formation of the central square formation was rather strange. It was actually arranged symmetrically from north to south. From the front to the back, the first echelon consisted of 20 rows of 1,000 men, each with leather shields and scimitars. The second echelon consisted of 15 rows of 1,000 spear throwers each. The third echelon consisted of 15 rows of 1,000 crossbow archers each. On each side of the phalanx, there was a watchtower cloud chariot more than 30 feet tall, with a huge red flag with the character Zhao fluttering in the air. One could imagine how much effort Zhao Zhuang had put in to deal with the Qin army's pincer attack. What was even more brilliant was that he was able to gradually adjust the formation in the midst of a chaotic battle. It was indeed impressive. Seeing how Zhao Zhuang handled the situation so well, Bai Qi, who was looking up the tower, was also filled with emotions. No wonder they're the only Zhao army that can match the Qin army in this era. Regardless of the fighting strength of their soldiers or the capabilities of their generals, they are on par with the Qin army. The only thing they are lacking is the strength of the country. Their objective of delaying Zhao Zhuang's army has been achieved. Bai Qi immediately ordered Meng Ao's infantry to retreat and regroup with the main army to make space for the incoming 100,000 cavalry. At the same time, Bai Qi ordered the rest of Wang Qi's army to gather and position them on the west side of Zhao Zhuang's army. After Meng Ao's army gathered, they positioned themselves on the east side of Zhao Zhuang's army, forming a pincer attack from the east and west. Bai Qi's deeper objective was to use the east and west sides of the army to firmly hold back the cavalry on the two flanks of Zhao Zhuang's army, preventing them from cutting in and engaging in a chaotic battle with the cavalry heading south. Bai Qi's arrangements made Zhao Zhuang exceptionally uncomfortable. He was like a trapped beast with enemies on all sides. The only gap was the southern barracks. It looked like a path of survival, but in reality, it was a dead end. What made Zhao Zhuang even more helpless was that he had already prepared for a pincer attack from the north and south, but Bai Qi did not place a single soldier on the southern side. This caused his arrangements to be completely useless. It was too late for him to reorganize his army. The difference between Zhao Zhuang and Bai Qi was clearly shown in this back-and-forth battle. The rumbling of horse hooves was like thunder from the nine heavens, exploding in everyone's ears. The sound came from afar. One moment it was 10 miles away. The next moment it felt like it was right in front of them. Zhao Zhuang knew that the enemy's cavalry had finally arrived. The flames of war rose again. An unprecedented battle once again took place in Chongping Valley. Raise your shields. The commander began to give the order. Compared to the Qin's heavy armored soldiers, the Zhao's infantry were light and agile. The leather shields they held were large and round. The crescent blades they carried were both light and sharp. The horses of the Qin cavalry were all armored. The riders were also armored and carried long swords on their backs. This was a battle between spears and shields. Huan Qi knew that his goal was to lead the cavalry to completely penetrate the Zhao Zhuang army's formation. If they were unable to completely penetrate, they would face the risk of being surrounded. The cavalry on both sides of Zhao Zhuang's army wanted to cut in and clash with the incoming Qin cavalry. The Qin army on the east and west sides immediately moved out. Like a pair of iron pincers, they held the cavalry back and engaged in a chaotic battle. The Black Steel Torrent launched a fearless attack against the rain of arrows and javelins that filled the sky. After paying a heavy price, the vanguard led by Huan Qi finally reached the Zhao army. The Qin cavalry were invincible. Using the inertia of their high-speed charge, they ignored the Zhao scimitar soldiers and quickly pierced through the first row, followed by the second and third row. The Zhao scimitar soldiers did not show any weakness. The scimitars in their hands were like flowing water, accurately chopping off the legs of the horses. In an instant, the riders were thrown off their horses by the inertia. What awaited them was swords and knives. The mutant cavalry army, led by Shi Wansui, was in the middle of the 100,000 cavalry. It was fortunate that they were protected from the rain of arrows and javelins. Otherwise, they would have suffered heavy losses before even coming into contact with the Zhao army. After paying a heavy price, Huan Qi's army finally broke through the formation of the Zhao scimitar soldiers and spear throwers. What they faced next was the defenseless crossbow archers. Once they broke through, the pressure on the mutant army in the middle and Wang Ling's army at the back would be greatly reduced. With an unstoppable momentum, they surged towards the Zhao Zhuang army like a tidal wave. When Huan Qi's army reached the middle, they were already exhausted. He made a prompt decision and led his army to attack from the left and right, starting to trample on the 30,000 crossbow archers in the middle. The mutant army, led by Shi Wansui, arrived first. Following the bloody path that Huan Qi's army had created, they effortlessly broke through the formation of the Zhao scimitar soldiers and spear throwers. They also came to the crossbow archers' formation. Under Huan Qi's signal, the mutant army did not stop and continued to charge forward. After the crossbow archers' formation, it was the spear throwers' formation and then the scimitar soldiers' formation. Ouyang Shua gritted his teeth in anger at Huan Qi's order. He had thought that Huan Qi had found his conscience, but it turned out that he was waiting for him here. His main force was killing the defenseless crossbow archers in the middle, while the mutant army went to bite the last tough bone. Military orders had to be obeyed. Even though Ouyang Shua was angry, he had to ask Shi Wansui to continue forward. Thinking about it, Huan Qi's arrangement was not inappropriate. There were 3 armies, and Wang Ling's army was in charge of the rear. They had already suffered heavy losses. Huan Qi's army was in charge of the vanguard and had also suffered heavy losses. The only one that was unharmed was the mutant army in the middle. Therefore, it was natural for the mutant army to be in charge next. Luckily, the army of Shanghai County was not a weakling and had seen all kinds of battles. The crossbow archers in the middle were chased around by Huan Qi's army. When they reached the rear, they were no longer as orderly as they were at the start. Shi Wansui grabbed the chance and ordered the army to press forward. They had to break through the last 2 lines of defense in one go. Compared to the Qin cavalry, the 2nd Brigade and the Forbidden Brigade were better. Their horses were also better than the horses of the Qin army. Shi Wansui was confident of this. The mutant army easily broke through the formation of the spear throwers. Then, they charged through the formation of the scimitar soldiers. Like a tsunami, they swept past the formation of the Zhao army. Seeing that the formation of the Zhao army had been broken into pieces, Bai Qi ordered the east and west armies to press forward and surround Zhao Zhuang's army. In an instant, the weather changed. The clear sky was suddenly filled with dark clouds. Zhao Zhuang was in the middle of the battle, and his personal guards were scattered. He was no longer able to command the army. The huge army suddenly lost its command system and immediately became chaotic. Gradually, it started to show signs of weakness. The soldiers were fighting on their own and could not tell the directions. In a short period of time, they had already suffered heavy losses. On the contrary, under the command of Bai Chi Chao, the various armies of the Qin army formed into a cohesive whole. Like moving clouds and flowing water, they attacked separately, pierced through, surrounded, nibbled away at Zhao Zhuang's army bit by bit. Bai Chi's commanding skills had reached the peak of perfection. It had risen to the height of art. His brain was like a compact machine, accurately calculating every step without the slightest error. Every detail on the battlefield could not escape his eagle-like eyes. He made full use of it. Zhao Zhuang's army was in an unprecedented crisis and was on the verge of collapse. At the critical moment, Zhao Kuo finally led his army and rushed over to reinforce them. To be continued. Chapter 271. Zhao Kuo rushed over with his troops and saved the Zhao village army at the last moment. The excellent quality of the Zhao army soldiers was fully displayed in this battle. Even though they were in danger and suffered heavy casualties, not a single deserter appeared in the Zhao army. All of them fought to the end. It had to be said that this was a miracle of the Warring States era. After Zhao Kuo rushed over, he took command and gathered the scattered Zhao village army back together. With the addition of Zhao Kuo's 150,000 fresh soldiers, the Qin army was under a lot of pressure. Seeing that things were not going well, Bai Qi decisively gave the order to retreat. Zhao Kuo did not waste too much time. After gathering with the Zhao village army, they retreated towards the Old Pass. This unprecedented battle had many twists and turns. After fighting for an entire day, both sides lost more than 100,000 soldiers. Chomping Valley became a land of death. Blood soaked the ground, and it was impossible to grow crops. Looking over, the plains, hills, and valleys were filled with the corpses of dead soldiers. There were Qin soldiers in black and Zhao soldiers in red. The little Dongsong River was completely dyed red. The surging river water was like waves of blood. After the battle, the Qin army arranged for people to collect the corpses, bury them, collect usable weapons and armors, and find lost horses. The sky of Chongping Valley was still terrifyingly dark, indicating that the battle was far from over. As the evening approached, a light drizzle began to fall from the sky. Gradually, the rain became heavier and became a rainstorm that engulfed the entire Chongping region. The abundant rainwater washed away the bloodstains on the battlefield. The rainwater turned blood red and gathered at the Dan River, dyeing it bright red. The bright red river water was the best illustration of this battle. After the rainstorm, the earth regained its vitality, as if nothing had happened. In this battle, the Zhao army successfully broke free from the Qin army's trap. Even though they suffered heavy casualties, they managed to turn the tables. The Qin army was more depressed. Not only did they let the enemy escape, their general Wang Ling died in battle, and Wang Ling's army was completely annihilated. None of this was something to be optimistic about. According to the setting of the battle, historical figures like Wang Ling, who were not the leaders of the camp, would not have the chance to appear in the wilderness after the battle ended. In the Wolf Mountain House, Lord of Martial Peace Bai Qi's expression was terrifyingly dark. The generals sat on 2 rows of stone blocks in an orderly manner, their expressions solemn. As a representative of the mutants, Ouyang Shuo was invited to attend the military conference. He sat quietly in a corner without saying a word. According to the statistics of the general and the army, other than the destruction of Wang Ling's army, Huan Qi's army had lost over 10,000 men, Wang Ling's army had lost over 50,000 men, and Meng Ao's army had lost over 30,000 men. The number of Qin soldiers killed in the battle reached an astonishing figure of nearly 150,000. As for the inhuman army, Ouyang Shuo had also done his calculations. Of the 7,000 infantrymen led by Chen Tang, less than 4,000 had successfully retreated from the battlefield. Of the 24,000 cavalrymen who set off for the expedition, there were now less than 20,000 left. The 10,000 cavalrymen from Shanhai County were responsible for the main attack, but they also suffered heavy casualties. Nearly 2,000 of them were killed, which made Ouyang Shuo feel extremely pained. In the Battle of Chongping, Ouyang Shua had brought 10,000 cavalrymen with him. That was more than half of Shanghai County's forces. Yet, on the first day of the battle, they had already lost 1/5 of their forces. How could he not be heartbroken? The defeat of this battle is due to the 40,000 mutant army that suddenly charged out of the Zhao army's old pass. Yesterday, extraordinary man who says he has no clothes had already reported to me. I didn't pay enough attention to him, which led to today's defeat. Unexpectedly, Bai Qi didn't reprimand the generals. Instead, he started to reflect on himself. Wang Qi and the others immediately looked at Ouyang Shua, who was sitting in the corner. Among the generals, Huan Qi's gaze was the friendliest. He had seen the strength of the mutant army. Being stared at by these generals, Ouyang Shua's heart shook. He stood up and said, "Reporting to Lord Com Marshal, the arrival of the mutant army of the state of Zhao at the Old Pass is the will of the heavens. It isn't something that can be changed by humans. In just one day, the Zhao army has already made such a move. No matter how we prepare, it is useless." That's right. The generals all agreed. Ouyang Shua wasn't trying to absolve Bai Qi. Bai Qi's arrangements were not inappropriate. His on-the-spot command today was even more amazing. With his own strength, he had turned the Qin army's disadvantageous situation around. After the battle, the Zhao army had been killed in a short period of time. This was an abnormally shocking number, almost equal to the army of the royal tomb that had been destroyed. "Lord Com Marshal, now that the Zhao army has escaped, what should we do next?" Left concubine Wang Qi asked. Bai Qi stared at the map of the Shandong Mountains and rivers and did not speak for a long time. The Qin army's military meeting ended just like that. With Bai Qi's capabilities, he couldn't come up with any shocking military plans in a short period of time. He could only plan slowly. After Ouyang Shua left the mountain, he reported the generals' meeting to his allies. Everyone was also speechless. Since that was the case, Ouyang Shua immediately left Zhu Shou behind to analyze the current situation. Only when the night fell and the sky was as dark as ink did Zhu Shou leave Ouyang Shua's tent. Outsiders had no way of knowing what the two discussed in secret. When they arrived at the old pass, other than the 70,000 soldiers that were guarding the pass, the main force of the Zhao army still had more than 300,000 soldiers. Compared to the Qin army, the Zhao army had lost more than 170,000 soldiers. Just the Zhao army alone had lost more than 100,000 soldiers. In addition to the encirclement of the royal tomb, the Zhao army also paid a heavy price. The old pass could not hold such a large army. Helpless, Zhao Kuo first arranged for a general to lead 50,000 soldiers to occupy the royal tomb. He then arranged for Zhao Zhuang to station 150,000 soldiers at the foot of the old pass. The remaining 100,000 soldiers were stationed at the old pass. After Zhao Kuo moved his residence to the old pass and settled down, the first thing he thought of was to open up the passage between the 100-mile stone wall and Handan so that Handan could continuously transport rations to the old pass. The rations stored at the old pass could only last the army for a month. Compared to Zhao Kuo, Bai Qi's reaction was faster and more decisive. When Zhao Kuo arranged for the 100,000 soldiers to leave the pass to annihilate Ing Bao's army in the north, Ing Bao had already received orders from the Lord of Martial Peace to retreat from Chongping Pass. Bai Qi knew that with the main force of the Zhao army retreating to the old pass, Ing Bao's less than 40,000 soldiers would not be able to defend the pass. Rather than that, it was better to take the initiative to withdraw the army and reduce unnecessary casualties. At this point, the Qin and Zhao armies seemed to have returned to the 3 years of confrontation between Wang Xiai and Lian Pe. In reality, neither Zhao Kuo nor Zhao Kuo planned to do so. After 3 years of confrontation, be it Qin or Zhao, the burden of war on their countries was almost beyond what they could bear. Countless rations were gathered to the battlefield, and the number of civilians several times the number of soldiers was conscripted to serve the army. They had to transport rations to the army day and night, and countless young men were sent to the battlefield. The economy of the country was on the verge of collapse. This was especially true for Qin. Their lone army had created a long transportation route for rations. For every rations they transported to the battlefield, 4 to 5 rations would be consumed on the way. If this confrontation continued, even the powerful Qin would not be able to hold on. The national strength that they had painstakingly accumulated over the years would be dragged down by this battle. Militarism was a great taboo for a country. Emperor Wu of Han's expedition to the Xiongnu had used up all the resources that Wen Jing had accumulated. Emperor Yang of Sui's 3 expeditions to Goguryeo had used up all the national strength that Emperor Wen had accumulated during his reign. Di Chen's tent at the Old Pass. The first step has been successfully implemented. Is it time for the second step? Xiongba asked. Di Chen nodded and said, I will bring up the suggestion to Zhao Kuo during the military conference tonight. Good. Do you think Zhao Kuo will agree to our plan? Why not? Isn't today's victory enough to prove the point? What do you think, Battle Wolf? In the battle during the day, Battle Wolf had led the inhuman army to destroy Wang Ling's army. He had even taken Wang Ling's head and was ranked second on the military contribution list, just below Ouyang Shua. The reason why Ouyang Shua was able to suppress Battle Wolf was because of the 10,000 cavalrymen from Shanghai County. Otherwise, it was very likely that he would be surpassed by Battle Wolf. Therefore, Battle Wolf's prestige in the Yanhuang alliance was growing day by day. Battle Wolf smiled faintly and said, In my opinion, even if we didn't bring it up, Zhao Kuo would have had the same idea. Why do you think so? Don't underestimate Zhao Kuo. In history, Zhao Kuo was able to defend for 46 days without any food supplies, and his army did not rebel. He is not an easy opponent to deal with. After advancing rashly, Zhao Kuo will definitely learn his lesson and find another way to defeat the Qin army. With his personality, it's impossible for him to be like Lin Pe and not come out. Zhang Lang analyzed. Great. The allies couldn't help but applaud Battle Wolf's analysis. Looks like we have a 60% chance of winning the Battle of Chongping, Di Chan said with satisfaction. 10 days later, the news of the Zhao army successfully breaking out of the encirclement and killing Qin's General Wang Ling had spread to all the kingdoms, shocking the world. Previously, when Zhao's 400,000 main army was trapped by Qin's 500,000 army in the Chongping River Valley, Zhao had sent envoys to ask for help. Unfortunately, the 5 kingdoms in Shandong could not see the situation clearly and didn't dare to make a bet. Adding on the fact that Qin's envoys were sniping everywhere, Zhao ended up with nothing. Now that the Zhao army had successfully broken out of the encirclement and killed Qin's general, it was undoubtedly a boost to the confidence of the 5 kingdoms in Shandong. The situation of the war gradually became clear. Qin's dream of conquering Shandong seemed to be getting further and further away. The kingdoms in Shandong had been afraid of Qin for a long time. At this time, Zhao sent a group of envoys led by Prime Minister Lin Xiangru to persuade the 5 kingdoms in Shandong to send troops to attack Qin together. This time, the attitudes of the kingdoms were a little subtle, and they all reorganized their troops. Seeing that the situation was developing in a direction that was disadvantageous to Qin, Prime Minister Fanju of Qin also repeatedly attacked, using large amounts of money to bribe the various kingdoms in Shandong, making sure that they would not send troops to attack Qin. Because of this, the waves of diplomatic relations between the warring states once again swept up like a whirlwind. To be continued. Chapter 272. Just as the envoys were busy dealing with the situation, Zhao Kuo made a new move. On the second day after the battle, Zhao Kuo ordered Zhao Zhuang to lead 50,000 elite light cavalry out of Fukuxing and into Hanoi before turning southwest to attack Wild King's fortress. Ever since the Zhao army started using the Hu style of riding and shooting, they brought along horses' milk and dried meat to ensure that they would be able to fight the battle in 10 days. As a precaution, Di Chun and the other feudal lords contributed 400,000 military ration pills to Zhao Zhuang's army. Thus, Zhao Zhuang led 50,000 troops east without any signs of moving rations. It was truly undetectable. Wild King's fortress was the Qin army's main logistics base, and the only fortress from Han to Shangdang. 3 years ago, Bai Qi ordered Wang He to attack Wild King's fortress. Once the army settled down, they immediately built a large granary to store rations. At the same time, they widened the official road from Wild King to Shangdang and south to Hanoi to prepare for the continuous transportation of rations. In the following year, the carriages and boats never stopped. All the rations in the country were transported to Wild King. During the 3 years of stalemate, the Qin army's rations never stopped. Wild King had already accumulated a few large granaries. After Bai Qi joined the army and replaced Wang He as Qin's commander-in-chief, the Qin Army Strategic Center had shifted north to Duanshe Town, west of Old Horse Ridge. Wang He, who was previously stationed at Wild King's fortress, also led his troops to Chongping under Bai Qi's orders. As the battle progressed, in order to ensure that there were no mistakes, Bai Qi deployed his troops to Chongping several times. Eventually, the Zhao army was surrounded and the Wild King's fortress was left with few soldiers. Zhao Zhuang led 50,000 light cavalry and traveled day and night. They arrived at Wild King's fortress in 10 days. The defenseless Wild King's fortress faced the sudden arrival of the Zhao army. Although the defenders of the fortress resisted and tried to defend the city, they were outnumbered. On top of that, Battlewolf and the others who accompanied them used their storage pouches to bring along many siege weapons. After a fierce battle, the Qin army was finally defeated. All of them died in battle, and not a single one survived. After taking down the fortress, Zhao Zhuang immediately ordered a huge fire to light up the granaries in the fortress. The raging fire dyed half of the sky red. Because there was too much grain in the granary, the fire burned for 3 days and 3 nights without being extinguished. A burning smell spread in all directions. By the time the Qin army of Hanoi received the news and came to reinforce, Zhao Zhuang's army had already retreated. The faces of the Qin soldiers turned pale when they saw the Wild King fortress was burned into ruins. If the escape of the Zhao army and the death of Wang Ling were not enough to make the various states in Shandong determined, then the fall of the Wild King fortress had made the feudal lords see the hope of defeating the Qin army. Among the kingdoms, Wei and Chu were the most proactive. Lord Xinling of Wei and Lord Chunshin of Chu tried their best to persuade their kings to send troops to attack Qin together. Even the Republic of Korea was unwilling to be left out and reactivated the former Shandong prefectural governor, Feng Ting. The deep meaning behind this was self-evident. The 3 states of Zhao joined forces once again. For a moment, the sky was covered with dark clouds. In the Battle of Chongping, more than 90% of the armies of Qin and Zhao were gathered. Both sides fought with all their might. If either side was defeated, they would be consigned to eternal damnation. Handan, Zhao Palace. King Xiaoqing's mood, which had been gloomy for a month, suddenly turned for the better. He happily said, "Ma Fuzi did not disappoint me. He is indeed a famous general." All the officials agreed with him. Only Lin Xiangru, who was standing at the side, had mixed feelings. Everyone in the Zhao court is certain that the Zhao army will win this battle. The Qin army's rations were cut off and they were forced to retreat. Shandong will soon return to Zhao. Lord Pingyuan, Zhao Sheng, was still a little worried. He cautiously said, "My lord, Ma Fuzi is young and rash. After this great victory, I am afraid he will become arrogant again. With the fall of the Wild King fortress, we only need to defend it, and the Qin army will naturally retreat. I am just afraid that Ma Fuzi will advance rashly again and fight the Qin army. This is not good." Lord Pingyuan's words were like a gust of cold wind, causing the entire court to be filled with a biting cold wind. Once they thought of the Zhao army being surrounded again, all the officials shuddered. Bai Qi's reputation is too great. Even in such a situation, no one can say that the Zhao army is certain of victory. Once Bai Qi grasps the opportunity, the tables will turn in an instant. Like Lord Pingyuan, King Xiaoqing is still fearful of Zhao Kuo's reckless advance. When he knew that the Zhao army was surrounded, he could not sleep at night. Hearing Lord Pingyuan's words, King Xiaoqing's heart tightened. He said, "Uncle is right. I will draft an edict and have Uncle bring it to the camp to restrain Mafuzi. He will not easily leave the fortress to fight again. Yes, Lord Pingyuan was finally relieved. Handan, Lien Po's residence. After being relieved of his position as Great General by King Xiaocheng, Lien Po did not listen to his good friend Lin Xiangru's arrangement to go to Chu. Instead, he returned to his residence in Handan and refused to meet anyone. Hearing that the Zhao army has conquered the Wild King fortress, old Lien Po's expression was complicated. He mumbled to himself, "Am I really wrong? Am I really not as good as Mafuzi? I hope that the Zhao army will win and I will have no regrets." Qin, Xianying Palace. King Zhao of Qin frowned. Looking at Fanju opposite him, he asked, "Marquis, how are the states?" The fall of the Wild King fortress has caught both of them off guard. Fanju's white hair seems to have grown a few more strands. Bitterly, he said, "My lord, the tides have turned. No matter how we fight, it will be useless. The key lies with the Lord of Martial Peace. Let's see how he will turn the situation around." King Zhao of Qin was in charge of logistics in Hanoi. Before returning to Xianying, he specially met with Bai Qi. Outsiders naturally had no way of knowing the conversation between the ruler and the minister. The only change is that after the secret meeting, King Zhao of Qin's expression is much more relaxed. He is no longer as serious as when he first heard about the fall of the Wild King. Bai Qi's words before he left once again rang in King Zhao's ears. The loss of one city or territory is not enough to determine the outcome of the war. What really determines the outcome of the war is on the battlefield. The Prime Minister will continue to guard Xianying and manage the state affairs. Do your best to collect rations and transport them to Duanshu town. I will once again head to Hanoi and mobilize men above the age of 15 to form reinforcements to Chongping. King Zhao of Qin said decisively. Yes, Fanju solemnly replied. Qin is in trouble both internally and externally. It is time for the king and his ministers to work together. Seeing this, Fanju could not help but say, "Valiant Qin, we will fight together. Yes, this is the most difficult period for us Qins. I believe that we will be able to withstand the difficulties and get through this." King Zhao of Qin said passionately. Compared to Zhao, the king, his ministers and his people are even more tenacious in the face of adversity. While the outside world is changing, the battlefield of Chongping is silent. After successfully capturing the Wild King fort, Zhao Kuo mobilized another 50,000 infantry soldiers from the 150,000 soldiers stationed outside the Old Pass to reinforce the Huguan fort. This was the only fort between the Old Pass and Handan to ensure the smooth flow of food supplies. At this point, the Zhao army has formed a line of defense along the Guguan Fortress and Royal Tomb. This line of defense will completely cut off the possibility of the Qin army surrounding the Zhao army. Huguan and Guguan Fortress are in sync with each other. If the Qin army wants to run to the north of the stone wall, they will have to face a pincer attack from both sides. Unless they send out their main force, it will be difficult for them to do so. Wolf Mountain Middle Command Residence. After the Middle Command commander introduced the Zhao army's formation, he reported the latest military news. Wei's Lord Xinling led 150,000 troops from Daliang and entered Hanoi County. The vanguard is heading straight for Chongping. Other than Wei, the other states are also mobilizing for war. They're slowly forming an alliance. Damn it, a bunch of fence-sitters. The hot-tempered Wang Ci could not help but curse. With no rations inside and a strong enemy outside, the Qin army has never been in a precarious situation. Even so, the generals were not dejected. The reason for this is because the Lord of Martial Peace, Bai Qi, is their god of war. "How much rations do we have?" Bai Qi asked in a deep voice. Other than Wild King's fortress, Duanshu town, Old Horse Ridge, and Light Wolf City have also stored some rations. But the amount is not large. Added together, it is only enough for the army for 20 days. In addition, Marquis Ing has started to collect rations from the country, and they are being transported to Duanshu town. Due to the long journey, We cannot count on them in the short term. Bai Qi nodded and looked around at the generals. He said calmly, the Zhao army has 4 good points. Firstly, they have sufficient rations. Secondly, reinforcements are coming. Thirdly, they have shrunk their formation and are able to defend well. Fourthly, they have turned defeat into victory and their morale is high. However, the Zhao army also has 4 shortcomings. Firstly, the vertical defensive line looks unbreakable, but in actual fact, it is too long. The army cannot take care of the front and the back at the same time. Moreover, there is a lack of horizontal expansion. As long as we are determined, we can easily split it into 2. Secondly, after taking down Wild King's fortress, the Zhao army did not have the strength to chase after us and did not completely block off our rations route. Their tactics were not carried out completely and gave us a chance to turn the tables. Thirdly, after consecutive victories and with the arrival of reinforcements from Wei, the army is starting to underestimate the enemy. Fourthly, the army is holed up at the old pass and their tactics are simple. They have changed from aggressive attacks to passive defense. The cave was so quiet that only the sound of breathing could be heard. The generals knew that every time there was a big battle, the Lord of Calm Marshal would first understand the situation of the 2 armies. After that, he would come up with a bold and decisive strategy to defeat the enemy. The generals held their breaths and waited for this most exciting moment. Our army defeats the enemy. These are the 16 words. Bai Qi said each word with a pause. Surround the enemy and attack the reinforcements. Fortify the walls and clear the field. Hit the snake where it hurts. Block the encirclement. Wang Yi cupped his hands. Lord of Calm Marshal, please explain. The 16-word strategy is to surround the enemy and attack the reinforcements. Bai Qi turned around and drew a circle with his long sword. The Zhao army has shrunk their defensive line and is giving us the chance to attack. As long as we feign an attack on the old pass and attract the attention of the Zhao army, we will send our main force out of the White Path, pass Ling River, and enter Hanoi to kill the Wei army. Once the Wei army is destroyed, the alliance will be broken and the Zhao army will be surrounded by us again. Chapter 273. P.S. For those who are saving chapters to read after the battle, if you have the ability, please subscribe automatically. Don't let the author look at the subscriptions and cry silently. Thank you for your support. The generals sighed in unison, admiration written all over their faces. However, the Lord of Martial Peace had always been strict and stern, so the generals never dared to cheer under his tent. They all looked excitedly at this mighty god of war, anticipating his detailed plans. Ouyang Shua sat in the corner, feeling emotional. Only a peerless hero like Bai Qi could be a commander. Fierce generals like Shi Wansui and Eli could be generals, but not commanders. The difference between the two was obvious. Unfortunately, to subdue Bai Qi was as difficult as ascending to the heavens. Even though the mutant army's performance in the previous battle was remarkable, it was not enough to attract Bai Qi's attention. Generals, listen up. Bai Qi's words interrupted Ouyang Shua's thoughts, making him alert. Huan Qi's 40,000 cavalry joined the 25,000 cavalry of Ing Bao's troops and 20,000 cavalry of the mutant army. Then transfer 15,000 cavalry from Wang Qi's army to make up for the 100,000. The army will be led by Huan Qi, with Ing Bao as his deputy. They will go through the White Path, pass Ling River, and enter Hanoi to intercept and kill the Wei army. Yes, General, Huan Qi and Ing Bao replied solemnly. Huan Qi's lack of help had caused Wang Ling's death, and he was filled with anger. Now that Wei dared to provoke Great Qin, he was furious and decided to teach them a lesson. Ing Bao was a member of the royal family and respected no one in the army except Lord of Martial Peace Bai Qi. From tomorrow onwards, Meng Ao's army will advance towards the southern camp of the Old Pass and pretend to attack forcefully to confuse the Zhao army. Wang Qi's army will support from the side and be responsible for guarding Old Horse Ridge to ensure the safety of the rations. Wang Qi and Meng Ao were two generals, one brave and the other steady, a pair of extremes. Because it was a feint, Bai Qi arranged for Meng Ao to be the main attacker and Wang Qi to support. He was worried that Wang Qi would be rash and turn the feint into a real attack, affecting the entire battle. Bai Qi's ability to choose generals could be seen. Yes, general. After the generals dispersed, Bai Qi went to find Wang Ci alone and gave him some secret instructions before letting him go. On the second day, Meng Ao's army left the southern line of barracks and rushed towards the royal tomb's barracks in a grandiose manner. They looked as if they would not stop until they reached their goal. In the west, Wang Ling's army was also frequently mobilized. Banners and flags were waved, and smoke and dust billowed. Zhao Kuo and Prince Pingyuan, Zhao Sheng, were standing side by side on the city gate tower. Although Zhao Kuo did not fully agree with the imperial edict brought by Lord Pingyuan, he had no choice but to accept it. He followed the king of Zhao's request and formed a vertical defensive line, determined to hold the line and not come out. Zhao Kuo did not take Meng Ao's army seriously. He had set up an army of 50,000 in the royal mausoleum. Within 10 days, the soldiers had finished repairing the camp and putting it back into use. Moreover, at the foot of the old pass, Zhao Zhuang was leading an army of 100,000 ready to respond at any time. He did not think that Meng Ao's army could succeed. Back then, he had led an army of 150,000, but was still unable to take down the royal mausoleum in a short period of time. Why is the Qin army so anxious? Lord Pingyuan did not understand and asked. Zhao Kuo smiled calmly. Of course they want to fight with their backs against the wall before their rations are completely cut off and their reinforcements arrive. Bai Qi is an expert in using troops. Why would he be so anxious? Could there be a trap in this? Lord Pingyuan still could not let go of his doubts and said uneasily, "You must be joking. Bai Qi may be powerful, but right now we are in a favorable position. What can he do?" At the end of the day, although he had experienced defeat, Zhao Kuo still did not fully trust Bai Qi and wanted to compete with him. Lord Pingyuan looked at the high-spirited Ma Fuzi and did not say a word. He knew that without concrete evidence, any speculation would be futile. He could only choose to trust Zhao Kuo's judgment. Under the cover of Meng Ao's army and the dust stirred up by Wang Ling's army, Huan Shi and Ing Bao led 100,000 cavalry and quietly left the camp, moving towards the White Path in the east. The Qin cavalry was not like the Zhao light cavalry. They could carry horse milk and meat. The accompanying soldiers all carried biscuits and meat that they had prepared beforehand. Before eating, they had to start a fire and roast it. Compared to the Zhao light cavalry, it was much more troublesome. Luckily, Ouyang Shuo and the other lords of the Mountain and Sea Alliance offered their rations to the Qin dynasty to reduce the pressure on the cavalry. Otherwise, without strong support from the rear, the expeditionary army would be like a tree without roots. 10 days later, the army entered Hanoi Prefecture. Although Hanoi Prefecture was a new prefecture that Qin had just conquered, King Zhao Qin was personally in charge of Hanoi and rewarded the people of Hanoi. The people of Hanoi were greatly comforted. Therefore, the 100,000 cavalry were like fish in water as they marched in Hanoi Prefecture. Prince Xinling of Wei led 150,000 soldiers into Hanoi Prefecture. They were like candlelight in the night. In the eyes of Huan Shi and the other generals, there were no secrets. Huan Shi was very clear that this expedition had to end the battle quickly. Firstly, the logistics of the army would not be able to last for long. Secondly, if they left for too long, it would easily arouse the suspicion of the Chongping Zhao army. After some discussion, Huan Shi and Ing Bao chose a route that the Wei army would definitely pass through and set up an ambush. They were prepared to catch the Wei army off guard and defeat them in one blow. The place they chose for the ambush was not a steep canyon, nor was it a dangerous place. Instead, it was an ordinary open plain. In a radius of a few hundred miles, other than the official road, there were only a few scattered villages. The 100,000 cavalry were hidden in one of the villages. Not far from the village, there was a vast forest with lush foliage. It was the perfect place for the army to rest. Seeing such a large army, The villagers were naturally uneasy. Fortunately, other than gathering food from the village, the soldiers did not do anything too out of line. The Lord of Martial Peace, Bai Qi, was very strict with his army. He did not allow his soldiers to rob the people or even abduct women for sexual pleasure. Even a fearless general like Ying Bao did not dare to openly disobey Bai Qi's orders. After the army settled down, Huan Qi sent out several scouts to monitor the movements of the Wei army. 2 days later, the Wei army arrived as expected. Looking from afar, the 150,000 infantry and cavalry army stretched out for dozens of miles. The once famous Wei soldiers had declined and were no longer as brave as they were in the past. A moving army was not suitable for a surprise attack. Because the battle line of the army was too long, even if they intercepted the front line, the back line would have enough time to get into formation and would not be able to kill them effectively. Therefore, the time Huan Qi chose to attack was after the Wei army had set up camp. Because it was a continuous march and there were almost no Qin guards in Hanoi Commandery, the Wei army set up camp casually. They did not know that not far from the camp, a pack of hungry wolves had already set their eyes on them. Just as the Wei camp was about to be set up, 100,000 cavalry charged out of the forest like a surging black tide towards the Wei army. Their aura was overwhelming and unstoppable. The rumbling of the hooves caused the earth to tremble. It was like a huge wave or a tsunami. The black tide gradually swallowed the earth. The green plains were instantly drowned and the earth changed color. Oh no, it's the Qin army. The Wei army panicked. The Qin army was like a pack of tigers and wolves. In recent years, the Wei army had suffered at the hands of the Qin army and had developed a fear of them. At this time, the Wei army had already started to gather at the camp. After a day of continuous marching, the soldiers dragged their tired bodies and unloaded their rations. They were preparing to tidy up the camp, feed the horses, and cook their meals. They did not expect the enemy to suddenly attack, and the entire camp was in chaos. Shouts, the neighing of horses, the clashing of pots and pans, cursing and scolding. All sorts of noises could be heard, and it was like a huge market. Luckily, the Wei army's commander, Prince Xinling, was not an ordinary person. He calmed the morale of the army and directed the troops at the same time. He ordered the cavalry to gather quickly to intercept the Qin army, while the infantry quickly got into formation. The 150,000-strong army naturally would not set up camp at the same place. They were split into front, middle, and back lines. When the front line was setting up camp, the middle line arrived while the rear line continued to advance. Huan Qi led the 50,000-strong army and was in charge of attacking the front line. Ying Bao led the mutant army and was in charge of cutting off the middle line. Prince Xinling Wei Wuji was personally in charge of the middle line. In the world today, only the Zhao army could compete with the Qin army. As for the Wei army in front of them, they were no longer as brave as they were in the past. Compared to the elite Qin cavalry, they could not withstand a single blow. The camp of the front line was scattered by Huan Qi's army and could no longer regroup. Huan Qi led the army and moved through the camp, causing a great massacre. The plains that were originally unknown was remembered by the future generations because of this battle. In the camp of the Central Army, the ones guarding Prince Xinling are the last remaining Wei soldiers. Shi Wansui volunteered to lead the mutant cavalry to attack the Wei soldiers. The cavalry of Shanhai County were even stronger than the average Qin army. How could the soldiers of Wei stop them? With the 2nd Brigade leading the charge, the steel flood fearlessly and resolutely smashed through. A battle of spears and shields ended in a complete victory for the Shanhai County Cavalry. Prince Xinling, who was full of confidence, could only bitterly lead his personal guards and escaping to the rear line. Even Ying Bao, who had always thought highly of himself, could not help but be stunned when he saw the bravery of the mutant army. Before this, he was still unhappy that Huan Qi had treated the mutant army well. Now, he was completely convinced. Although the Wei soldiers were not as powerful as they were in the past, they were still an elite army. How could Ying Bao not be shocked that they could not withstand a single blow from the mutant cavalry? The Wei army that stretched for tens of miles on the vast plains was smashed by the 100,000 Qin cavalry. Not only could the front and back not connect, even the middle line was smashed into pieces. The Wei army was mainly infantry with cavalry as support. The small number of cavalry could not stop the Qin cavalry at all. Instead, Huan Qi and Ing Bao worked together to outflank them and cripple them. The Wei army had lost the support of the cavalry, and the remaining infantry had no fortifications to defend or trenches to defend against the enemy. The mighty Wei army was like a flock of sheep waiting to be slaughtered. Under the chase of the Qin army, they covered their heads and fled. To be continued. Chapter 274. The vast plains were filled with Wei soldiers fleeing in all directions. The soldiers left behind their supplies, threw down their weapons, and even took off their armor just to run faster than their comrades. Ing Bao was a bloodthirsty man and would not let go of such a good opportunity. He was merciless in commanding the army and refused to accept the surrender of the enemy. Wherever the cavalry passed, there were corpses. Huan Qi was not a kind person and was also cold-blooded and heartless. Ouyang Shuo would not let go of such a good opportunity. As the mutant army reaped the lives of the enemy, Ouyang Shuo could feel that his contribution points were increasing at an unimaginable rate. 100,000 cavalrymen were like precise war harvesters, quickly and efficiently harvesting the Wei army's front and middle troops. Wherever the hooves passed, there were cries of agony. Wherever the blade flashed, heads would fall to the ground. Compared to Huan Qi and Ing Bao, the 20,000 mutant army under the leadership of Shi Wansui, Eli, and Zhang Liao was more efficient and lethal. This was especially so for the cavalry of Shanhai County. Relying on their superior equipment, horses, and excellent commanders, they charged through the enemy's formation and left a trail of blood. After defeating the front and middle armies, Huan Qi left behind 20,000 soldiers to continue to hunt down the fleeing enemies. He then met up with Ing Bao and led his army towards the rear of the Wei army. When Prince Xinling returned to the rear, he realized that he could not do anything and immediately reorganized his army, leaving behind their rations and retreating back into the country. Just as the Qin army was chasing after the Wei army, Prince Xinling had already escaped with his troops. A pity that as long as the Wei army was still in Hanoi County, they would not be able to escape the eyes of the Qin army. The Qin cavalry followed the path of retreat of the Wei army, and like experienced hunters, they chased after them all the way. How could the Wei army, with their infantry as their main force, shake off the pure cavalry? The pursuit lasted for 3 days and 2 nights. The Qin cavalry were like a pack of hungry wolves, biting down on the Wei army. The moment the sky brightened, the Wei army, who had been on tenterhooks for an entire night, saw the demons chasing after them. The rations that the Wei army had left behind along the way became a great help to the Qin cavalry, completely solving the problem of the Qin army's lack of logistics. It must be said that this was very ironic. The Qin army chased them all the way to the border of Hanoi County. Of the 150,000 ambitious Wei army, only a tenth remained. The already weak Wei kingdom could no longer climb back up after this battle. It was only a matter of time before it was destroyed. Under the protection of his personal guards, Prince Xinling, Wei Wuji, led the remnants of his troops and fled back to the capital Dalian. He was immediately stripped of his military power by the king of Wei and imprisoned. This is a story for later and will not be mentioned for now. After completely crippling the Wei army, Huan Qi did not dare to slack off. He gathered his army and hurried back to Chongping. The battle to annihilate the Wei army was only the prelude and appetizer. The real battle was about to begin at the Chongping battlefront. On the way back, Ouyang Shuo took a look at his contribution points. They had already reached a staggering 250,000 points. On average, the Shanhai County cavalry had killed an average of 25 enemies in the 2 battles. Bai Hua and Feng Xiaohuang had also caught up and surpassed Battle Wolf, taking up the 2nd and 3rd positions on the contribution rankings. Of course, the current contribution ranking did not include the final bonus contribution points. With the performance of Di Chun and Zhang Lang, the final rewards would not be small. Therefore, the battle for the contribution rankings was far from settled. The news that the 150,000-strong Wei army had been intercepted and killed by the Qin army was like a cold current that completely froze the restless minds of all the countries. All the feudal lords were silent. The envoys of Zhao were all rejected by the other countries. The state of Han removed Feng Ting's real power again and no longer mentioned the issue of troops. The 5 states of Shandong all brought generous gifts and sent envoys to Xianying to repair their relationship. Just as Bai Qi had said, the defeat of the Wei army meant the collapse of the alliance. At this moment, the army that King Qin had gathered in Hanoi was quietly moving towards Mount Taiyang. A storm was brewing. The Battle of Chongping had once again become confusing. Di Chen's tent at the Old Pass. When the contribution points of Ouyang Shuo and the others kept rising, Di Chun had already sensed that something was wrong. After a few days of observation, Di Chun and the others did not see any signs of the Shanghai County Cavalry in Meng Ao's army. Since they did not participate in the battle, why were their contribution points still rising? There must be a huge battle elsewhere. Di Chun told his speculation to Zhao Kuo, but he did not take it seriously. It made sense. Even Bai Qi was very cautious when it came to information that Ouyang Shuo had not verified. Moreover, Di Chen's speculation was so unimaginable that the young Zhao Kuo would naturally ignore it. When the news of the defeat of the Wei army came, Zhao Kuo was at a loss, while Di Chun and the others had bitter expressions on their faces. Are we going to lose to the alliance of mountains and seas again? Military Kill Ripper was a little indignant. Seeing the situation change in an instant, no one would be happy, let alone someone like him who hated Ouyang Shuo to the core. War Wolf shook his head and said, "This time we did not lose to the alliance of mountains and seas, but to Bai Qi. That's right. No matter how hard we tried, no one would have thought that Bai Qi would be so bold as to mobilize his army to intercept the Wei army in such a disadvantageous situation. Now that I think about it, isn't that Bai Qi's style? It may seem risky, but in fact, he has already figured out the enemy in our side. He knew that Zhao Kuo would not dare to take the initiative to attack." War Wolf said emotionally. "What should we do next? The previous plan has been disrupted. We need to rearrange it." "That's right. Even without the reinforcements from the feudal vassals, Qin and Zhao are now evenly matched. We need to plan in detail and not let the alliance of mountains and seas turn the tables." The Zhao army's residence. After learning that the Wei army had been intercepted, Zhao Kuo locked himself in his tent and refused to see anyone. Even Lord Pingyuan, Zhao Sheng, was refused entry by Zhao Kuo's personal guards. According to Zhao Kuo's nature, after gaining the upper hand over the Qin army, he wanted to press on and not give the Qin army any chance to breathe. However, the king of Zhao's cautiousness had ruined his plan. Now that the Wei army had been defeated, no reinforcements could come to Chongping. With the Zhao army's current situation, they had no choice but to defend. They could only carry out Lien Po's plan and fight a long battle with the Qin army to see who could last longer. In comparison, the Zhao army had the advantage. The problem was that the current situation was very different from the time when Lien Po and Wang Xiai were at a stalemate. During Lien Po's time, Qin and Zhao each occupied half of Chongping. Using the Dan River, the barracks, and the 100-mile stone Great Wall, Lien Po had built 3 defensive lines. They were both extended and deep, making them impregnable. The defensive line that Zhao Kuo had built was a vertical line. Comparing the two, it was easy to tell who had the upper hand. With the current situation, Meng Ao's army was pressing in front of the Royal Tombs barracks. It was impossible to change the formation and build more defensive lines. The only way was to make an issue of the current defensive line. It was true that Zhao Kuo was well-versed in military books, and his theoretical knowledge was abnormally rich. In terms of only defending and not attacking, there was a period that was very suitable. Thinking of this, Zhao Kuo suddenly sat up. "Men, summon General Zhao Zhuang immediately." Zhao Zhuang hurried over. Seeing Zhao Kuo sitting solemnly in front of the marshal's table, he quickly bowed. Zhao Kuo invited Zhao Zhuang to sit opposite him and said with a faint smile, "How is the offensive of Meng Ao's army?" Ever since the Qin army that intercepted the Wei army returned to Chongping, the offensive of Meng Ao's army did not decrease but increased. If the previous attack was a feint to coordinate with the Qin army to intercept the Wei army, then the current offensive seems to be really aimed at taking down the Royal Tombs barracks and further compressing our defensive line, Zhao Zhuang said solemnly. Hearing Zhao Zhuang mention the Wei army again, Zhao Kuo's face twitched for a moment before returning to normal. He said, "If that's the case, can you still hold on? Once the Royal Tombs barracks fall, the army stationed at the foot of the old pass will have to face the threat of the Qin army." Zhao Kuo did not reveal the answer to his own riddle, but tested Zhao Zhuang instead. "Rest assured, great general, I will not let the Qin army have their way." Zhao Zhuang first made a military pledge, then said, "However, I am worried that once the Qin army sends more troops, the garrison troop station at the barracks will be greatly pressured." "Great general, should we mobilize the garrison troop station at the old pass to reinforce them and prevent them from being caught out in the open?" Zhao Kuo shook his head and said, "If we send more troops, we will fall right into the Qin army's trap. They can use this opportunity to start a war and slowly nibble away at our main force, preventing a protracted war. Then what should we do? I have a formation that can be deployed at the foot of the old pass. I can guarantee that the Qin army will not be able to break through." Zhao Kuo was full of confidence. "Great general, please tell me, what is this strange formation that has such an effect?" Zhao Zhuang was overjoyed. "Round formation of the City of Carriages." "Round formation of the City of Carriages? That's right. I heard that this is Sun Bin's formation. It has been lost for a long time. How did Great General know about it?" Zhao Kuo smiled without saying a word. Zhao Zhuang knew that the Great General was very confident. He said happily, "As long as Great General can remember the layout and evolution of this formation, it will definitely work." Zhao Kuo nodded and said, "Sun Bin once said that this formation is hard to shake, even a mountain. There is no need to evolve it. As for the layout, it is also simple and easy to implement. Take a look." He grabbed a large piece of parchment paper, picked up a brush, and started drawing. Zhao Kuo was an intelligent and quick-witted man. As he spoke, he drew and drew clearly. In less than an hour, he had thoroughly described the round formation of the City of Carriages. The great Sun Bin, he is indeed a military strategist. This formation is very useful. Zhao Zhuang clicked his tongue in admiration. It's fine if the Qin army does not send more troops to attack. But if they do send more troops, then the Royal Mausoleum's barracks should be able to put up some resistance. We cannot risk our lives and exhaust them. It is wise not to fight head-on and exhaust each other. Withdraw the army to the foot of the old pass and welcome them with the round formation of the City of Carriages. Let's see how Bai Qi breaks through my formation." Zhao Kuo was full of confidence. "Yes, great general." Zhao Zhuang answered and retreated. He went to prepare everything needed to set up the formation so that they could form the round formation of the City of Carriages at the foot of the old pass at any time. That way, they would not have to be flustered when it came time to set up the formation. Apart from that, he also had to pass on the layout of the formation to the officers in the army. The officers would then arrange for the soldiers to practice the formation. To be continued. Chapter 275. Wolf Mountain, Qin Army Shogunate. The calm martial ruler, Bai Qi, once again gathered his troops and prepared for the next phase of the battle. According to Bai Qi's 16-word strategy, surround the enemy and attack the reinforcements. Fortify the walls and clear the field. Strike the snake's weak spot. Conceal the encirclement. After besieging the enemy and attacking the reinforcements, it was time to fortify the walls and clear the fields, which was to capture the Royal Mausoleum. Once the camp is set up, the Zhao army will be trapped at the old pass, and once again, the Zhao army will be surrounded. Therefore, tomorrow's battle must be decided no matter what, Bai Qi said in a powerful voice. Yes, General. The generals answered loudly. Tomorrow, when we attack the city, Meng Ao's army will be the main force. Huan Qi's army and Ing Bao's army will be the main support. They will be responsible for blocking the Zhao Manor's army at the foot of the old pass. Wang Xi's army will continue to guard the camp and will not enter the battle unless ordered. Yes, sir. Ouyang Shua sat at the side, and a trace of doubt flashed across his face. Since it was a real siege, why was the valiant Wang Ling army still holding their ground? When he observed Wang Xi's expression just now, she actually didn't have the slightest bit of dissatisfaction, which inevitably made him feel strange. It was possible that Bai Qi had other arrangements that no one knew about. After annihilating the Wei army, not only did they destroy the alliance of the various countries in Shandong, but they also seized a large amount of rations and resources. The Qin kingdom had been supporting the Wild King fort for 3 years, and the rations in the national treasury were almost depleted. The fire at Zhao village burned the rations that the Qin kingdom had accumulated over the years. Therefore, although the supply route had been restored, the amount of rations that Marquis Fanju could gather in the country was very limited. Because of the frequent confiscation of grain, the people of Old Qin in the past were full of complaints. In order to support the frontline army, even the food rations of the commoners were required to be contributed. How could the commoners not complain? Because of this, Zhao Kuo concluded that if the two armies were to continue in this stalemate, the Zhao army would be stronger than the Qin army. It was a pity that the Wei state had suffered a crushing defeat, and the countless rations and supplies they had brought from the country were casually discarded in the campsite or on the sides of the road. This had truly benefited the Qin state. Qin Zhao Wang was already organizing the commoners to transport this batch of rations to Light Wolf City at top speed. The plain where the armies of Qin and Wei fought was located in Hanoi County, which was very close to Chongping. It saved them the trouble of transporting food in the middle, which was killing 2 birds with 1 stone. Within a few days, the rations would arrive at Light Wolf City. Due to this, the lack of grain for the Qin army had been greatly reduced. It wasn't as bad as what the Zhao army predicted. The next morning, the sun rose. It was another fine day. Early in the morning, the Zhao army began to get busy. They moved all the old chariots and usable items out of the old pass fort in preparation for setting up the circular formation of the chariots. Just as the Zhao army was busy, the Qin army had already moved out in full force. The black tide, which covered the sky and the sun, followed the beat of the war drums, lined up in a neat formation and walked out of the barracks one by one. Their banners fluttered, covering the sky and the sun. As usual, Bai Qi ascended the watchtower and commanded the army from above. Meng Ao was the first to set off with his 120,000 infantry and cavalry troops. The army on this path had been besieging the royal mausoleum's camp for days, so they were already familiar with the route. The only thing that was different was the order issued by the general last night to fight to the death. In the Qin army, once a battle was fought to the death, anyone who retreated out of fear would be executed without mercy. If the case was serious, it might even implicate his family. Therefore, in every battle to the death, the soldiers were all brave and resolute, fighting with their backs to the wall. In the roiling dust, Huan Qi's army and Ing Bao's army used the dust to follow behind Meng Ao's army. In the Battle of the Qin and Wei Plains, Huan Qi and Ing Bao's army had suffered very few losses. Of the 100,000 army, there were still 90,000 that could fight. Meng Ao's army once again advanced to the royal mausoleum's camp. The defenders of the camp looked at the army coming from afar and were not very nervous. After several days of fighting, the Zhao army was sure that the enemy was just putting on an act. The news of the Wei army's defeat was only known by the Zhao army of 10,000 soldiers and above. In order not to affect the morale of the army, Commander-in-Chief Zhao Kuo ordered that it was strictly forbidden to spread the news. Anyone who disobeyed would be executed. Therefore, in the defenders, other than a few generals, most of the soldiers were kept in the dark. They did not know that the Qin army today was completely different from yesterday. The generals knew and ordered the soldiers to be alert, but the effect was minimal. Because he had already given the order to the Lord of Calm Marshal, Meng Ao immediately sent his main force to attack. The several days of fighting were not without results. At least, the trenches in front of the camp had been filled up. The vast army stepped over the trenches, set up ladders, and launched an endless and fierce attack on the camp that belonged to them in the first place. The soldiers did not fear death as they charged forward. Such a fierce attack caught the Zhao army off guard. Only now did they realize that this time, the Qin army was going to get serious. By the time they realized, they had already suffered heavy losses. Luckily, the Zhao army was not as mediocre as the Wei army. Even though they had suffered heavy losses at the start, they quickly adjusted and used the advantage of the city walls to fight fiercely against the attacking Qin army. The fierce fire oil tanks and all kinds of defensive equipment were operated to the extreme by the Zhao soldiers, causing heavy casualties to the Qin army in an instant. Meng Ao sat in the middle of the army, his eyes unwavering, not caring about the heavy casualties at the front. He coldly waved his flag, sending groups of soldiers to the front lines, swearing not to rest until he reached his goal. The continuous fierce attacks put a lot of pressure on the defenders of the camp. They did not even have time to take a breath. Under the continuous attacks, there were already holes in the camp. Even though they were blocked in time, the situation was still dangerous. If the attacks continued, it was only a matter of time before the city was broken. With Meng Ao's keen senses, he saw a hole in the enemy's defensive rhythm and immediately sent the reserve troops forward. At this moment, the royal tomb camp was in danger. The defenders of the camp had to send a distress signal to the Zhao army. Even though Zhao Zhuang was in charge of setting up the city's formation, in reality, he had been secretly paying attention to the siege battle not far away. Seeing that the Qin army was changing from a feint to a real attack as he had expected, he immediately organized the army and prepared to rush over to reinforce them. Just as the Zhao army was rushing over, Huan Qi and Ying Bao, who had been hiding behind the Zhao army, suddenly charged out and blocked the retreat of the Zhao army with an unstoppable momentum. The 90,000 armored cavalry were like an impassable iron wall, blocking the way between the Zhao army and the royal tomb camp. The two generals, Huan Qi and Ying Bao, followed by Qi's orders to stop the enemy and kill the enemy. Relying on their mobility, the army weaved in front of the Zhao army, making it impossible for them to move forward. Zhao Kuo stood at the top of the old pass and saw that the Zhao army was blocked. He knew that the Qin army was determined to take down the royal tomb camp and remove this nail. Even though he had prepared the city's formation, Zhao Kuo did not want the royal tomb camp to fall too early. At the very least, he had to get the 50,000 soldiers out of the camp safely. Just as Zhao Kuo was about to mobilize the army inside the old pass to reinforce the Zhao army, the scouts suddenly came to report, "Great General, a large number of Qin soldiers have appeared to the north of the old pass with a large number of siege weapons. It seems like they're going to attack the old pass." What? Zhao Kuo could not believe it. When did the Qin army detour to the back of the stone wall? And he did not know about it. The scout team was useless, damn it. How many of them are there? No less than 100,000. Zhao Kuo's heart trembled. 100,000 soldiers. If he sent the defenders of the old pass to reinforce the Zhao army, then the old pass would be in danger. No. Zhao Kuo frowned and muttered to himself. How can there be such a coincidence? As he thought about it, Zhao Kuo could not help but feel a chill in his heart. The Qin army in the north must have set off a few days ago. That was why they could appear at the right time when the main force of the Qin army besieged the royal tomb camp. With this, they could pin down the army of the old pass and prevent them from leaving the pass to rescue the defenders of the camp. If Zhao Kuo did not care, then the enemies pinned down would immediately turn into a real attack. In this way, either the old pass or the royal mausoleum camp would fall. It was clear which of the two was more important. This was a blatant plot. Zhao Kuo could only bitterly choose one of the two. Or rather, he could only choose to defend the old pass and give up on the royal tomb camp. As for cooperating with the defenders of Hu Pass to attack the Qin army in the north, it was also not feasible. Hu Pass was too far from the old pass. By the time they came and went, the enemy would have long disappeared. This was the weakness of the Zhao army's defensive line. The vertical defensive line was too long, and the troops could not coordinate with each other smoothly. This gave the enemy an opportunity to take advantage of. At this moment, Zhao Kuo had a deeper understanding of Bai Qi's ingenuity in using troops. It was obvious that in this battle, Bai Qi had completely seen through the weakness of the Zhao army's defensive line and had made arrangements to target it. In comparison, Zhao Kuo was indeed a little immature. Zhao Kuo's dilemma was not only that he had to sacrifice the 50,000 soldiers of the royal tomb camp, but that if he really did not care and watch the garrison be taken down by the Qin army, it would be a huge blow to the morale of the army. If he saved them, he would have the heart, but not the strength. If he did not, he would lose the morale of the army. Zhao Kuo shook his head in pain and said bitterly, "Order the garrison to move to the north to defend against the Qin army. At the same time, order the defenders of the camp to hold their ground. Once the Qin army attacking the city is dealt with, the main force will immediately come out to reinforce them." "Yes, sir." The messenger's heart trembled. He did not dare to show any change in his expression and respectfully retreated. Everyone knew that Zhao Kuo's so-called coming out to reinforce them was just a piece of paper. When the main force really repelled the Qin army in the north, the royal tomb camp would have fallen long ago. How could there be reinforcements? Although everyone knew this, logically speaking, Zhao Kuo did not give up on the royal tomb camp. It was because of the Qin army that he had no other choice. In this way, the morale of the army would not be affected too much. It had to be said that although Zhao Kuo's move was not honorable, it was still an effective method. As a general, one must have a heart of stone. When it was time to be ruthless, one had to be ruthless. Bai Qi had once again taught Zhao Kuo a good lesson. After the Battle of Chongping, Zhao Kuo was growing at a speed visible to the naked eye. He was becoming more mature day by day. If he could really walk out of Chongping battlefront alive, he would definitely become a rising star. To be continued. You're tuning in to the Warrior Lore YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.